Chapter 86. While a certain princess was performing arrogantly, the real princess was trembling in anger below the stage. When she woke up, she realized that she was stripped clean like a little lamb and was thrown on the stage with only a cloak wrapped around her. If not for the two grey elves on her left and right restraining her, if not for the fact that she was worried that things would get out of hand, she might have already started to cause a ruckus. The fake princess was able to suppress the entire audience even more than the real princess, causing her to feel dispirited. However, the angel incarnation that followed after shocked her to the point of disbelief. Humans are a very xenophobic race, but there is a bloodline that is not only not xenophobic, it is even revered repeatedly. Angel. The first generation of Order, the messenger of God, the eldest son of God who participated in the creation of the human race, the race of God that has left the mortal world. On the murals of the church, in the sacred hymns, there are many praises for this race. Regardless of which epic or novel, angels are holy and pure. Their existence itself is the will of God, and wherever their sword points towards, it is the natural enemy of order. Perhaps, it is impossible for the existing angels to appear in the mortal world. This is also the reason why the humans who worship the gods of order revered them so much. After all, to a true king, the further away they are from the high and mighty gods, the better. In that instant, Renee understood the actions of the fake princess and cheered in her heart. Could it be that she is really helping me? Just the bloodline ability of this angel incarnation is enough for the Mist royal family to not be looked down upon. Even if it is just a fox borrowing the tiger's might, with that information, as long as we are given enough time, we will have the hope to rise once again. When Rain saw the man slashing Carter with his sword, she waved her fists and cheered. Not to mention the fact that she was already disgusted by the gorilla, the accumulated resentment over the past few days had made her have no good impression of this country. But following that, Daesos's sudden proposal completely shocked her. The marriage of the emperor of two countries? Just thinking about it is inconceivable. Regardless of whether that man is doing it for the bloodline power or to completely swallow up the Donglan Principality, while he is displaying his ambition, he is also displaying his sincerity. Without a doubt, this is an extremely important diplomatic choice. In that instant, Rain really hesitated. If she were to sacrifice herself and accept this marriage proposal, perhaps her dukedom would have some time to catch its breath. However, she then thought of something else. When the difference between the two parties involved in the merger is too great, then, it is just another way of saying that it is an annexation. If the current East Mist communal country were to merge with the Orland Empire, it could only be annexed as one of the provinces. Reject, I must reject. But directly rejecting will not only hurt Daesos's face, it will also bring shame to the Ottoman Empire. It might even bring up a war. What should I do? Obviously, this was an unexpected incident, but with the entire empire's pressure and bargaining chips, Daesos never expected that he would be rejected. However, the desperate situation in the eyes of the real Renee is a piece of cake in the eyes of the fake Renee. I'm sorry, you are a man, but I like women. Daesos was full of confidence in his proposal, but in the end, he was rejected mercilessly. He wanted to use this opportunity to vent his anger, but he didn't know how to do so. In the end, he could only become a farce and a topic of conversation before dinner. The person he proposed to was someone who likes the same sex. This kind of rejection is probably the most helpless, but it is also the most sufficient reason to reject. How can a person of different sex date? While Renee was secretly glad that she and the Donglan Principality had just escaped a disaster, she immediately realized that she was in trouble. While she was saved, she seemed to have been tricked by the fake Renee. This pit is probably so deep that she will never be able to climb out of it in this lifetime. Wait, she actually used my face to make such a declaration in public. Then, won't I never be able to clear my name in the future? I won't be able to marry anyone in this lifetime? Alright, tomorrow, the headlines of all the tabloids have already confirmed that the Emperor's proposal is rejected. Princess Renee reveals her sexuality, the secret history of the Emperor's love rival Svina, a love triangle that transcends borders and genders. Without a doubt, these will be the hottest topics recently. As for Renee herself, under the witness of the god of holy light, as a holy knight, There is no need to doubt the authenticity of her vow of true love. Soon, with the spread of information and gossip, Her Royal Highness Renee's special preference of loving beautiful women and not the country will spread throughout the world. Furthermore, this will definitely become a model for the fake to become real. If it is proven that she is normal in the future, this incident of deceiving the Ottoman Emperor in public will become an insult to the entire Ottoman Empire. The consequences will be unimaginable. Then, not only will Renee not be able to explain herself, she will also have to work hard to disguise herself as an abnormal woman. She might even have to have multiple wives and concubines. Bastard. I will kill you. How can I face others like this? Alright then, if it wasn't for Diana holding her down, Renee, who is only wearing thin undergarments, would have unhesitatingly charged into the ring despite the risk of exposing herself. After this tragedy was turned into a farce, 2 hours later, when the tabloids and newspapers couldn't wait to spread the news about what happened in the royal family arena, the real and fake princess returned to the temporary embassy and sat together. Roland, you are Roland. You really didn't die. It has been a long time, Big Sister Kelly. Due to the spectacular performance of the princess, the previously unknown East Mist communal country suddenly became a hot topic. The temporary embassy that was initially deserted was immediately filled to the brim with visitors. However, it was a pity that the doors were tightly locked, with no intention of receiving visitors. However, in the guest room on the second floor, it was extremely noisy. Bastard, I will fight you to the death. You actually dare to frame me. In front of the furious young lady, I, who had reverted to Roland's appearance, leisurely sipped on iced bitter tea. This was a specialty of my hometown, and it had been a long time since I had encountered it. Naturally, I had to taste it more. Then, can you think of a better solution? Not only did you not embarrass the Ottoman Empire, you also rejected me. You should thank me, otherwise, you would be in deep trouble now. Renee wasn't an unreasonable person, and what I said was the truth. At that moment, Renee fell silent. She had been thinking about it, but not to mention a better solution, she couldn't even think of this solution. Who are you? Roland wouldn't call me that. After the initial joy, Callie's expression became a little hesitant when she heard how I addressed her. The world is big, but I am bigger. Roland would never call anyone big sister or big brother. In the diary, Kelly was one of the closest people to me in the past. As expected, I couldn't hide it. However, I didn't expect that I would be exposed the moment I opened my mouth. In that case, let's try the second form of address in the diary. Right. There was also a little secret regarding the wood elves. Yeah, little Kelly. The star-shaped birthmark on the back of your neck, the moles on your right breast and left buttocks are still there, right? Hearing this, Kelly immediately crossed her arms and glared at me with a red face, as if she was guarding against a pervert. Diana, who was traveling with me, also looked at me in astonishment. I have indeed forgotten many things. However, short-lived species are able to surpass the limits of their lifespan, so this kind of sacrifice is only natural. However, Calebrian shook her head. Even though her instincts told her that the person in front of her was indeed Roland, she still didn't dare to believe it. This was a matter of great importance, and no amount of caution would be excessive. If she had obtained something that Roland left behind, she might have found out about this as well, but she had a better method of inspection. A short sword with 2 dragons coiled around it was placed in front of me. This was the lamp of life that was connected to my soul. The moment I got closer, the small white bead emitted a blinding light, proving that this was indeed my lamp of life. As expected, it's you, little pervert. Just how did you manage to extinguish it, then light it up, then extinguish it again? Before I could even react, Kelly hugged me. Her excited face made me wonder if she was still the calm wood elf from before. It's simple. Die and live again, then die again. Hearing this, Kelly was stunned. Die and live again, then die again. It was easy for her to say, but anyone who had a slight understanding of the world and souls would know that this was absolutely impossible. Alright, it's rare for us to meet again, so let's not talk about these boring matters. Right. Is the black and white color of this lamp of life the indication that one's soul is inclined towards order and chaos? It seems that Cavendish really went all out this time. Indeed, There was nothing more inclined towards chaos than a demon who was the incarnation of chaos. However, what surprised me was that Kelly shook her head. 130 years ago, your soul bead was even darker than his. Can you tell me, were you him? The nightmare that represented the night. The wood elf's voice trembled as she asked. Even though the news that Lord Yongyar was Roland had spread among the upper echelons of the various countries, as the first teacher of the Gemini stars, she was unwilling to believe that the kind and sunny Roland would end up in such a state. It was me. Back then, I found out that the destruction of the Mist Country wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface, so I cleansed all of the suspects and accomplices. It seems that I went a little overboard. Sister Kelly. What did you do? Why did Sister Kelly faint? Alright, the nightmare that she was most worried about turned into reality. Without saying a word, all sorts of feelings welled up in Kelly's heart and she fainted on the spot. However, after she fainted, she left the three of us behind and we could only stare at each other. I, who had lost the relevant memories, could only know from the diary that Kelly loved the past me. However, I was unable to comprehend the excessive reaction. Under Renee's emergency treatment, Kelly had just woken up when she suddenly hugged me and started sobbing softly. Woo, it's all because Sister Kelly is useless that you and Cavendish suffered so much. The person she valued had fallen into darkness. The Prince of Sunshine had become a demon king. The intense self-blame caused Kelly to sob uncontrollably. Her tears drenched my back. This familiar yet unfamiliar feeling made me unable to move. This feeling of being loved and cared for as a junior, being cared for by an elder, was the first time that I had experienced it. I wasn't used to it and it made me want to run away. Looks like I need to find something that can help me recover my memories. Even though the other party was crying a mess, I didn't feel anything at all. This was the first time that I felt that even the diary was unable to replace my memories. Some things, once lost, were difficult to retrieve. Alright, after spending a great deal of effort, I finally managed to coax Kelly, who was constantly blaming herself and crying her eyes out, to change the topic back to the main topic. Will you come back? The trembling Kelly asked, but I shook my head. Why would I return? My subjects were still in Sulphur Mountain City. The current Donglan Principality was no longer the original Mist Country. Besides, it would be inappropriate for a ruler who had already abdicated to ascend to the throne once more. My goal was not to limit myself to just a single country. However, I will help the Mist Country rise once more. Those documents have already shown a portion of my sincerity. Now, the main event will begin with this sword. Roland Sacred Sword, Semigod Equipment Attack, 22 to 44 plus 11 is because it is considered a plus 11 semigod equipment. Even if the sword is used to deal the lowest damage of the weapon, it will still inflict an additional 11 points of Silver Flame enchantment damage. Indestructible, even against a god equipment, this sacred sword will not break. Mist Royalty. The Roland Sacred Sword is the symbol of the royalty of the Mist Royalty. Only those who have obtained the recognition of the king can wield this sacred sword. Following the rise of the Mist Country, it is working hard to evolve and become stronger. But at the same time, only the most trusted knight of the Mist Country can wield this prideful sacred sword. Wind of the King. The wielder's strength +2, agility +2, stamina +2, charm +6. In a country established by the Mist bloodline, the wielder's reputation will be calculated from respect. There is a string of yellow words on the body of the sword. The Roland Sacred Sword is the sword of the legendary Saint Knight Prince Roland. Only his descendants and successors will be able to obtain the recognition of this sacred sword. Usage requirement. Mist bloodline. The silver sacred sword gave off a dazzling radiance. Yet, I was secretly crying. I should have known that the system was up to no good. From the very start, it wasn't something that I could wield. Become a knight loyal to the Mist royalty? That would require a conferment ceremony and land. Putting aside the fact that the current Donglan Principality wasn't able to do that, even if it could, I wasn't willing to become a knight loyal to someone, even if the person I was loyal to might be my own descendant. And even if I could wield it, in my hands, it would at most be a godly weapon. Even though such an item was rare, I could still find it. With the guidance of history, I felt that it shouldn't be too difficult to find it. However, if the current generation's crown prince knight princess were to find the Roland sacred sword, the symbol of the mist royalty, then it would be fate. In this era where royal authority and divine authority were intertwined, the recovery of a lost object of royal authority would greatly increase the cohesiveness of the entire country. Those citizens who were lost due to war would also consider returning to their homeland. At the very least, the reputation of Renée who found the Roland sacred sword would skyrocket. With the royal authority and godly weapon as a bargaining chip, she could even attempt to merge with the other two small countries established by the citizens of the Mist Country. This way, with territory and people, there would be hope for the Mist Country to rise again. The Roland Sacred Sword. Is this the legendary Roland Sacred Sword? The cheering Renée had just touched the sacred sword when she was sent flying. However, judging from the fact that she wasn't burned by the sacred flames, she did indeed meet the requirements to wield it. It was just that she was still too weak, so weak that the sacred sword couldn't even acknowledge her. However, looking at this persevering princess, I was also thinking of ways to make her stronger. Why is Renée so weak? Is there no one to teach her? Renée's talent in swordsmanship is still alright, but it is only alright. With so many miscellaneous matters weighing down on her, how could she have the time to slowly practice her swordsmanship? She doesn't have any talent in divine arts, so the path of a holy knight and a priest has been severed. Even though she is smart, the path of a wizard requires a large amount of time, which she doesn't have. Thus, the most she can do is to practice her swordsmanship and train her body. Don't use you and Cavendish as a standard to compare. The Mist royal family has only produced the two of you in several thousand years. This is unfair to the other members of the royal family. I nodded my head. I pretty much knew what to do. I do have a new job here, a justice knight. Even though he is a knight of the god of law, he is the same as a holy knight. He doesn't need to be completely loyal to the church, and he doesn't need the willpower attribute that divine arts require. What he needs is intelligence and the understanding and analysis of law. Perhaps, the Donglan Principality can come into contact with the Church of the God of Law. If it is able to make it the national religion, many things will be different. Right, there is also the training of the Aurora Knight. We have to start now, or else it will be too late when winter comes. It didn't take long for us to get down to business. After all, it was just me talking and they listening. It wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. However, there was a personal matter that I really wanted to ask about. Right, Kelly, whose descendant are Renée and the others? Is it mine or Cavendish's? An ugly daughter-in-law would have to meet her in-laws eventually. Filled with unease, it wasn't a good idea to keep this doubt in my heart. In the end, I still asked about it. You actually don't know? All right, it was natural for Kelly to be surprised. However, I could only shake my head helplessly and point at my own head, indicating that I couldn't remember it. Suddenly, Kelly revealed a heartbroken expression. Then, she lowered her head and complained angrily with tears in her eyes. It is enough for you to forget about me. You actually forgot about our child. Our child. Our child. Our child. Our child. These 5 words echoed in my mind and the room at the same time. Catcher. 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 My and Diana's cups fell to the ground. Our mouths were wide open, unable to close. Clang. It was Renée who dropped her sword on the ground. She stared blankly at the big sister who had raised her up. Could it be that her ancestors were actually her children? Should she call her grandma? You must be joking. I was at a complete loss. The scariest thing about losing one's memory was not knowing what one had forgotten. Could it be that I had unknowingly forgotten about my wife and child? I am joking. I haven't married anyone yet. Kelly stuck out her tongue and made a face. Even though she was 700 years old, she could only be considered a young woman among the long-lived Wood Elves. The Wood Elves were famous for being emotional and optimistic. Catcher. This time, even the plate holding the cup fell to the ground. I clutched my chest and slumped on the chair. This shock wasn't good for my heart. I finally understood why the records regarding Kelly in the journal were so contradictory. Although she is as gentle as big sister and mother, she loves to joke too much. Sometimes, those can be fatal. Don't ever give her a chance, otherwise, you will regret it. Definitely. I even marked this part of the record with an asterisk. I almost believed it. Can you not joke about such things? Alright, I admit that I completely believed it. Actually, I don't know either. During the war, I directly returned to the Melody Forest. When I met her again, the person from back then had already changed beyond recognition. However, she should be a descendant of you or Cavendish. However, since she is a descendant of the mist and a few hundred years have passed, the bloodline would naturally thin out. Is there any difference? There was a huge difference. This was related to whether or not I was an experienced mage with over 300 years of experience. Alright, saying it like that was basically exposing my ugly side. It was also exposing that in these 300 years, I didn't make any progress in my love life. I wasn't that foolish. It should be Cavendish. After all, that child is more, I don't need to say the rest. I know that Cavendish is much more popular than me, but please don't pour salt on my wounds. But after that, that familiar body fragrance approached me again. Big sister Kelly hugged me again. If the beautiful memories are gone, it's fine to just make them again. Kelly, I love the cute little Roland the most. We just reunited and I was hugged 3 times. At the same time, I also understood what the words "be careful" of being used as a pillow meant. Big sister Kelly, I'm not a child anymore. Although Kelly's excessive passion moved me slightly, I didn't know what to do. After all, out of all the beautiful women I had met in the past, half of them wanted to kill me, while the other half had hidden daggers behind their smiles. It was unprecedented for a beautiful woman to throw herself into my arms with such kindness. I didn't know how to deal with it. Suddenly, Kelly revealed an evil smile as she came closer to me. She stuck out the tip of her tongue and lightly licked my earlobe. Feeling the soft touch on my earlobe, I instantly felt my entire body tremble. I then felt dizzy and hurriedly backed away. What did you do? Even without looking in a mirror, I knew that my face was definitely red to the point of being unbearably red. This time, I was completely exposed. Your reaction is exactly the same as before. And you still say that you're not a child. It seems that little Roland's love life is still a blank after so many years. I've also seen the Saint's time distortion ring before. We wood elves are the elves who are the most sensitive to natural life. It's our most basic racial talent to determine the age of an ancient tree through contact. Judging from your scent just now, your true age is far from what you appear to be. Do you need me to guess the true age of your physical body? I clasped my hands together in surrender. In the past, I was the only one who tricked others. Today, I finally met someone who could completely trick me. Was this the experience of an elder? However, it was so easy for me to trick the Queen of Banshees. PH, don't look down on me. I watched you grow up. Those tricks of yours are useless against me. It seemed that it wasn't just the difference in age and experience. More importantly, it was her understanding of me, while my understanding of her was only limited to information and books. Suddenly, as if she was dissatisfied with my guarded gaze, she hugged me again. Just as I looked at this woman who liked to tease me with my guard up, I heard a sobbing sound behind my ear. On my shoulder, Kelly started sobbing. You're too much, you stinky Lan. You actually forgot about me. To think that I've been thinking about you and worried about you. You actually only talked to me about work. You didn't even ask about me. Let me hug you, just for a moment. Wah, you bastard Lan. Feeling the sobbing behind me, I couldn't move at all. My 5 senses were intertwined and all sorts of tastes were present, but I really didn't know what to do. I was now certain that this woman who was both a teacher and a mother was the bane of my existence. I would rather fight an evil dragon alone than guess what she would do next. In the end, I could only helplessly let her do as she pleased. I hugged her for at least 10 minutes. Little Roland has also reached the age to become an adult. If it's Roland, it's fine. Even though she finally let go of me, I still couldn't tell if she was telling the truth or not. But looking at the green-haired elf before me whose eyes were swollen from crying, yet she was still smiling from the bottom of her heart, I felt that I had another reason to work hard. 10 minutes later, a huge fire suddenly engulfed the temporary embassy of the Donglan Principality. It seemed to be the work of a radical who was dissatisfied with the Night Princess's rejection of Daeso's marriage proposal. 20 minutes later, under the escort of a small squadron of Donglan Royal Knight, the princess and her royal teacher found a new residence, a 3-story villa. Welcome to the base of the Absolute Gentleman Alliance. We will provide the most reliable security and the most considerate room service. Chapter 87. This is the holy relic you mentioned. Before dawn, someone's great-great-great-granddaughter? It was like kicking someone off the bed. Are you rebelling? Why are you making a ruckus when the sun is not up yet? Last night, due to some reason, I didn't sleep for half the night. Now that I was woken up, I was immediately furious. This is the holy relic you gave me. See for yourself. Holy relic. It sounded very high class, but it was actually a special item infused with divine power. For example, a cup filled with divine blood, a wooden spear pierced through the heart of a certain god, or a shroud used by a certain god. If it was a holy relic of a certain god, it was usually an item used by that god before he ascended to godhood. If its believers came into contact with it, they could deepen their connection with the true God and rapidly increase their divine power. It was a rare treasure for every church. Naturally, I had a huge pile of the God of Law's holy relics with me. After the system appraised them, most of the usable ones were left behind in Sulphur Mountain City to be used as offerings, but there were a few that I brought along with me. Now that Renee had become a Justice Knight, I casually threw one of them to her and she was actually complaining about it early in the morning. Isn't that great? Holy pillow, with a Pikachu pattern, very cute. Ah, you don't know this famous electric mouse? Let me tell you, this is a cartoon I designed. Look, its cheeks are red and its body is yellow. Isn't it very cute? Who cares about your electric mouse? Saliva, saliva. The back of your holy artifact is covered in your saliva. It's so disgusting when it touches my face in the middle of the night. Wu Mianxi's pillow, holy relic. As Wu Mianxi has used it for a long time, this pillow has been tainted with his aura. Touching it while sleeping can deepen the connection between the user and the true god Wu Mianxi, and increase the speed of the user's cultivation of the power of law. He took the pillow and flipped it over. There was indeed saliva on the back. After hesitating for a second, he turned it upside down and fell asleep. Mph, if you don't use it, I'll use it. Without this pillow, I can't sleep well for half a night. Yes, the reason why he couldn't sleep wasn't because a certain someone had been waiting for half a night for a sneak attack that didn't come, but because he had lost his usual pillow. Hey, wake up. It's time for morning training. What other holy relics do you have? That's because holy relics used by true gods are like cabbages. However, I do have a few here. You definitely don't want the holy red scarf, but do you want the holy toothbrush? No. Holy robe. Hey, don't be happy too early. I know you're thinking about it. It's not those Western regions armors, it's the abbreviation of the holy bathrobe. It's pink. Big Brother Roland, you're a legendary hero. I grew up listening to your heroic stories. Can't you be more reliable? Is it appropriate for a girl to walk around in a man's bathrobe? Alright, I have a saint artifact here, and it is guaranteed to be the best artifact among all saint artifacts to connect with Wu Mianxi. Furthermore, wearing it is neither unnecessary nor eye-catching, so it is definitely useful. If it's that good, why didn't you take it out earlier? Over there. Take it yourself. Thus, I lifted the blanket and continued to sleep soundly. Where is it? Brother Roland, can you tell me? When she needed someone's help, she would be humble and submissive. Normally, she would be arrogant. This princess's temperament was really easy to control, but it was obvious that she needed to be disciplined. Isn't this it? Holy underwear, take it yourself. You can wear it inside, so it's neither unnecessary nor eye-catching. Furthermore, it will be in close contact with Wu Mianxi, so it is guaranteed to be closely linked. You old pervert. You're sexually harassing me again, eat my strike of condemnation. Alright, it was just a day after her job change. Obviously, her strike of condemnation wasn't that proficient yet, so it was just an empty slogan. Thus, She was instantly tidied up and dragged away for morning training. A new day started with a certain disrespectful old ancestor disciplining his little granddaughter. You actually dare to sneak an attack on me. Today, it's 2 swords and 1 sword. If you don't complete it, you won't be able to eat dinner. Practice seriously. What are you calling me? Don't try to take advantage of your seniority. Big sister Kelly told me that you're probably younger than me. The reason why I call you Big Brother Roland is because you have some reputation in the past. Otherwise, little brother Roland, do you want to eat a lollipop? This delinquent girl was obviously in need of discipline. You're asking for a beating. Practice your sword for me. If you can't finish before I finish practicing 30,000 swords, I will punish you with no dinner or supper tonight. Let's see if your big sister Kelly will plead for you. Don't. Big sister Kelly may seem gentle, but when it comes to class, she turns into a ghost granny. She's super fierce and scary. Ghost granny is behind you. Do you think I'll believe such a simple trick? If that fierce granny was here, I would have heard her footsteps long ago. She's been overweight recently. Who's pulling my ear? Cough. So I'm a ghost granny and fierce granny. I've troubled you to worry about my health. Looks like your highness etiquette and hygiene lessons need to be tutored. Please come to the 2nd floor after you've finished your sword training. Bastard Roland, you're scamming me again. So you're blaming me? I spread my hands innocently, but I smiled gleefully. I want a good sword, I'm serious. Even though I wanted to find a good weapon, I started to argue with that cat. The ambush a few days ago was an accident, but it was also within my expectations. I did need to find an opponent to test my skills on, but when I tasted the strength of this new battle style, I also noticed its weakness. That day in the arena, I was forced to face this weakness head-on. Magic Sword, Scarlet Conqueror attack power, 30 to 50 +9 is because it is considered a +9 legendary tier weapon. Even if you use the lowest damage of the weapon, you will still receive 9 additional lifesteal damage. Blood Conqueror. This magic sword has 5 forms. It will determine which form it can use based on the number of dead people in the user's hands. Every time the form is upgraded, a special skill will be added. The highest and lowest damage will be increased by 10 points. Currently at level 3. Blood Drinker's Rage. After use, the user will absorb the blood of all living beings in the surroundings. While dealing a large amount of damage, it will also recover the user's stamina. Cold-blooded Fangs. Those who are struck will suffer from unstoppable bleeding damage. This damage can be stacked infinitely. Blood Defiler's Curse. With the Sword Master as the core, a domain of filth will be created. Everyone will suffer from the pain of their blood boiling. There is a string of blood-red words on the blade. This magic sword will always thirst for blood and slaughter, regardless of whether the blood is from your enemies or from yourself. Back then, when I received this magic sword from Dasos, I was really hesitating on the possibility of escaping with the treasure, especially after I heard the temptation of the magic sword. Temporary Master. The amount of blood and souls you have harvested is more than 100 times that of the fool before me, Dasos. Among the 10 sword masters, only the great you are able to use my final form, which will be 100 times stronger than my current form. However, as the price, you must provide me with the blood of 10,000 people within a year. Most of the magic swords are the creations of demons and devils. Using a magic sword usually requires a huge price to be paid and it won't end well. However, equivalent exchange has always been the norm in this world. While paying a huge price, the power you obtain is also extremely terrifying. This Scarlet Conqueror is already comparable to the semigod equipment Holy Sword Roland at level 3. If it were to be upgraded to its final form, it is unimaginable how powerful it would be. Perhaps even a god equipment wouldn't be able to compare to it. However, if a level 5 magic sword requires the blood of 10,000 people, a level 3 magic sword would probably require 100 people. If the user is unable to pay the price, they would have to use their own blood to make up for it. 100 people a year, 1 every 3 days. Perhaps, Dasos is busy with the blood sacrifice. Back then, I rejected it. If I were to really transform it to its final form, just the prerequisites for the transformation would be inexplicable, not to mention the huge price that I would have to pay. However, As a swordsman, how could I not be tempted by the powerful strength and special effects of the magic sword? I am lacking in good weapons. As a master swordsman, to think that I can only wield 2 inferior black iron two-handed swords. This is really intolerable. After using the magic sword and holy sword, looking at Renee who is barely able to wield the increasingly powerful Roland holy sword, while I am using 2 iron swords that add up to less than 10 gold coins, how can I not feel dejected? Meow, if you want a sword, go look for a blacksmith master. Why are you looking for meow meow? The Queen of Banshees, who is getting more and more adorable, licks her claws, making it hard for me to look straight at her. Stop acting dumb. You know why I am looking for you. You are all 1,000-year-old foxes. Why are you playing games with me? Tell me, are there any god weapons nearby? Meow, there aren't any. I do have 2 fishbone blades, leftovers from last night. If you want them, I will give them to you. Heh, I knew that this would be the result, so I have already made preparations. Alright, since there isn't any, then there is no other way. Meow, this isn't like you, to actually give up. Yuen, I can't possibly make one out of thin air, right? Since there isn't any, I will forge it myself. Harlois is a little surprised. She only knows that the person in front of her is an expert in undead creations, but she has never heard that he knows smithing. Meow, you know how to forge weapons? Wait, Roland Mist, my dear disciple, what do you intend to do? But in the next moment, she understands. Roland is wearing that demon-like white coat, a mask and a pair of glasses. His eyes are filled with fanatical sparks, and within the reagent bottles and medicine bottles in his hands, countless strange liquids are flowing. You should have heard of that legend, right? Metal slimes can transform into weapons like metal rods, and the Metal Slime King can transform into the legendary god weapon. Anyway, you are already a slime. Changing a little of your attributes and adding a little of your abilities isn't much, right? Right, my ass. Don't pour those things into my body, not even the tweezers. Drill. Too big. Are you trying to kill me? Alright, under the threat of her life, Harlois finally doesn't have the leisure to act cute anymore. I admit defeat. I am telling you, there is a god weapon there. Take your drill away. TSK. What are you cutting? Are you that regretful? Do you really want to stab me here and there, drill me here and there? You unfilial disciple. Alright, in the face of Harlois' endless complaints, I raise the drill and test tube once more. She immediately becomes obedient. There is really a sword that you can use nearby. Do you know Pale Justice? The holy sword used by the legendary Holy Knight Cain. He is an Ottoman, and his descendants should be in this city. I don't need to explain the rest, right? Holy sword. I am overjoyed. This is an unexpected harvest. In the Aishi continent, holy sword actually means pure, divine sword. But in reality, there are usually 2 types of holy swords. The first type is the sword that represents a certain region, country, race, or family, and Roland Holy Sword is undoubtedly the first type. The second type is the sword that is infused with a pure soul, and this is usually the exclusive right of the Holy Knight. In fact, this was a backdoor that the Order gods had opened for their servants. When a Holy Knight stepped into the path of death and was unwilling to give up on his crusade against chaos, he could infuse a portion of his strength and soul into a weapon for future generations to use. This Holy Sword hammer is born. It usually restricts the user to be a Holy Knight, and it is very effective against chaos creatures. Why do I say that it is a backdoor left by the gods? Because other jobs have never succeeded in doing so, unless they transform into undead. The Order gods and River Styx won't let go of any soul of the dead. I am naturally satisfied to be able to obtain news of the Holy Sword. Thus, just as Harlois heaves a sigh of relief, I raise the drill again. What are you doing? Didn't I tell you about the Holy Sword? You are going back on your words. You liar who goes back on your words. Firstly, I didn't promise you anything from the start. Helping you evolve is my goal for today. Secondly, I am addicted to modification and I can't get rid of it. Lastly, and most importantly, I am a dual wielder. How can one sword be enough? The silly cat looks embarrassed, as though she is reflecting on how she fell for such a simple trick time and time again. Could it be that it is true that one's body affects one's intelligence? No, didn't I succeed every time I scammed you in the past? Intelligence is innate, you should have accepted your fate long ago. Don't even think about it. From anger to dejection, from dejection to excitement, I can't get tired of seeing Harloy's expression every time she is scammed. Perhaps, this is the reason why I like to scam her. This is my territory, no one will save you even if you scream till your throat breaks. So, just give in. No, take that white oily liquid away, damn pervert, why do you have tentacles? Could it be that the legendary pink book is really with you? Save me, someone is abusing the cat. Chapter 88. Ouch. It's you darned cat again. Recently, Roland seemed to be in conflict with his cat. If he wasn't careful, the cat would suddenly pounce on him, pouncing and biting, attacking him with its claws and teeth. If he was wearing slippers, he would definitely be a ferocious beast that would ambush him from behind. There wasn't any killing intent when he attacked, and his attacks were swift and accurate, causing Roland to cry out in pain countless times. If it was any other time, a battle between a cat and a human would have started immediately. However, now wasn't the time to watch a farce. Lord Roland, if you can't take care of your cat, please go out and play with it. On the podium, the bespectacled Collos glared at me angrily. Helpless, I could only grab her neck and spin her 4 to 5 times before throwing her out of the window in a daze. This is too much, how can you torture an animal like that? The cat will fall to her death. Cagio, who was becoming more and more animal lover, was filled with indignation. However, I shook my head. Good people don't live long, while calamities live for 1,000 years. If she would die so easily, she would have died again and again in 1,000 years. As expected, Heloise curses and complaints came through our telepathic connection. Darned unfilial disciple, how dare you treat the great queen of banshees like this? Just you wait, I will scratch flowers on your pillow, and, after hesitating for a few minutes, the darned cat finally released the most vicious and shameless curse in her entire life. I will pee on your pillow and bedsheets. I mean what I say. I am a cat now, so don't expect me to not do it. I am going all out. Since I dare to say it, I will definitely do it. Then, I will pack up the pillow and bedsheets and mail them to my old acquaintances in the Shiluor Empire. I will also mark your current appearance and name on them. The wet part is the secretion of the all-knowing one. Do you think you should mail them to your fanatical admirers to collect, or give them to your enemies to hold an exhibition and celebration party? I was wrong, I won't go. I will go practice my weapon transformation now. This was what I liked the most about Heloise. When she realized that she couldn't win, she would immediately admit defeat instead of stubbornly persisting. Perhaps, this was the main reason why this calamity was able to live for a few thousand years. Mph, you are still too inexperienced to fight against me. Student Luolan, since you like to stand so much, I'll let you stand as long as you want. Go outside and stand as punishment. But the next moment, I knew that I had fallen for a trap. I was currently in the middle of a class, and I was communicating mentally through the magic pet contract. Outsiders would think that I was just standing there in a daze, which made me seem a little crazy. Coincidentally, the temporary mentor, Collos, was glaring at me furiously. My daze had obviously become a challenge to her authority as a mentor. Thus, I had no choice but to obediently stand outside. That's right, they were currently in class, and the content of the class was still the teachings of the God of Law and the law itself. The teacher was naturally Collos, the highest-ranked law class here. After that intense battle, in the end, half of the first floor was turned into a law court, also a small church of the God of Law. In consideration of me and Diana, a small compartment was left as a holy light chapel. As for the veterinary hospital that a certain someone strongly requested, the stall outside the wall should be it. In any case, I wouldn't admit that I knew him. Not only that, I even secretly reported a certain veterinarian to the related departments for operating without a license. It was a pity that the town security of this city couldn't be compared to Sulphur Mountain City, so it would be difficult to deal with him. Alright, back to the main topic. To have Collos explain the teachings of the God of Law was her own wish, but it was also the strong wish of the listeners. Needless to say, Renee and Kelly were still hesitating on whether they should introduce the faith of the God of Law as the national religion, so naturally, they needed to deepen their understanding of it. Even Diana and Momo, the two grey elves, strongly requested to start a class. The most surprising thing was that not only was Casio interested in this faith of a true God that was growing rapidly in the underground world, even the person whose name I didn't want to be uttered was also interested in the faith of the God of Law. I still have to return to Sulphur Mountain City. I also believe that this new faith will spread to every corner of the world. However, I am a man who is fated to walk on the edge of the law. So, to challenge something, one must first understand what that thing is and study if there are any loopholes in it. A certain Draken has been acting more and more like a philosopher recently. His words made me think that a new scholar of law might be born for such a ridiculous reason. However, we don't have a reason to reject him from learning the teachings and laws. Furthermore, looking at the past 2 days, he seemed to be the most diligent student in the class. At the same time, Renee and the bunch of Royal Knight who came along with her were also listening to the class. Some of them were already considering if they should change their job to a Justice Knight. This is already the second day of the class, and today, there are 2 new listeners. Svina D.I. Nelson and Raymond Ron Nelson. As this elder sister accidentally became the Emperor's love rival, her landlord chased the siblings out of the house without any hesitation. Very quickly, after bumping into walls everywhere, Svina realized that even though the Ottoman Empire is huge, there isn't a place for them to stay. In this feudal human society where the core relationship between the feudal lord system and the knight conferment system, a knight and the monarch they are loyal to are bound together for good or bad. Needless to say, the most solid guardian knight. Actually, there are also guardian knights of the same gender, but they are usually close friends who are willing to risk their lives for them. The relationship between Svina and Renee is really hard to explain. A knight who betrays the one they are loyal to is the most despised. Helplessly, Svina, who knows that she has already boarded a pirate ship, can only rely on Renee. However, when they see the terrified Svina whenever Renee comes near, those who know the truth can't help but laugh secretly. As a top-notch preacher, Crosa's voice is pleasant to listen to, and she has a rather deep understanding of the teachings of the East Mist Forest. She is definitely more than enough to preach the faith of the East Mist Forest. However, when faced with Kelly, who has 700 years of experience, when faced with the Wood Elf nobles, this wild elf who is mysteriously 1 generation younger than her is unable to take it. Then, can you explain why the original law is divided into 2 parts? What is the difference between the law of God and the law of man? There are quite a lot of repetitions between the 2 parts. According to the summary of jurisprudence, wouldn't repeated legislation cause chaos in the execution of the law and weaken the authority of the law? But that is what the doctrine says. This was decided by Lord Wumianzi, so it can't be wrong. Being pressed into a corner, Crosa could only repeat the concepts from the books. This level of preaching to the point of knowing the way but not knowing the reason was more than sufficient. However, it was evident that this wasn't enough to convince the people of the East Mist. Helpless, I shook my head and could only walk into the hall on the first floor that was being used as a temporary classroom. Cough, if it is possible, allow me to explain. Actually, I have quite a friendly relationship with Lord Wumianzi, and I have heard him mention this before. Under the incomprehensible gaze of the crowd, I stretch out a finger and the silver light of law ripples on it, proving my identity as a law cultivator. It isn't impossible to cultivate 2 powers, but if one were to convert all of the power of holy light into the power of law like Momo, it would be equivalent to starting all over again. Furthermore, the 2 powers are similar and repetitive. Cultivating both at the same time is a typical example of an arduous and unrewarding task. Thus, my identity as a just knight, other than receiving the approval of Kolos, as expected of a god envoy, in the eyes of others, it is a typical example of an arduous and unrewarding task. However, this is enough to prove that I am indeed qualified to lecture on law. Cough. Firstly, it is the difference between the law of God and the law of man. The law of God is determined by the gods, and it only has 13 heavy crimes. All of them are publicly acknowledged crimes that cannot be forgiven, and they are basically unchangeable. The crimes that we, the law job, can only be judged by the gods, while the law of man is something that the Church of the God of Law has to constantly revise and improve. The jurisdiction and sovereignty are bound together. The law of God can be used in any place that the order gods are looking at, while the law of man can only be used in situations where the sovereignty is supporting it. This is the main difference between the two. The other gods also have commandments such as punish evil, prohibit extravagance, and desire, prohibit lies, and so on. However, other than their believers, the execution of these commandments would more or less be discounted. My 13 heavy crimes are publicly acknowledged, and I don't have to worry about the backlash from the other gods, local nobles, and royalty. Furthermore, it gives the law job a desire to eradicate evil deeds. It doesn't matter if others execute it or not, but the just knight has to execute it. However, this doesn't mean that the two of them are in conflict with each other. On the contrary, the two of them are actually the same thing. The law of God is the bottom line of the law of man. Since a crime is prohibited by the law of God, then the law of man is definitely not exempt from it. For example, the first crime of the 13 heavy crimes, those who willfully take the life of others for their own selfish desires shall be judged harshly by the God of law. Even after death, they will be punished by a mountain of swords and a sea of fire. There is also a corresponding clause in the law of man. The first clause of the crime of intentional homicide, those who intentionally commit murder shall be sentenced to death or imprisonment of more than 10 years. However, if the crime is in conflict with the later clauses such as self-defense and war of justice, the latter shall have a higher priority. It is the same crime, but the law of God has the tone of a religious persuasion. That last sentence that seems unnecessary to add additional crimes after death is actually a preparation for the future. On the other hand, the law of man is filled with ice-cold laws and punishments. There isn't a single bit of excess in it. Renee gets a little excited. She seems to have seen through the intricacies of the law. That is to say, the law job class only has to carry out the law of God. Then, what is the meaning of creating the law of man? It is prepared for countries and domain lords who believe in the God of law as their national religion. This law of man will obviously affect the interests of the local nobles. Aren't they worried that they will be collectively boycotted or even banned from spreading their religion? Kelly asks thoughtfully. She has been in the human society for a long time and she understands how corrupt and hopeless the nobles are. How could they possibly accept this kind of law that would endanger their rule? I smile. This is also the doubt that I had expected. Indeed, in most places, the nobles only pay 1 gold coin for killing a commoner for no reason. In some places, the royal family can even casually confiscate the assets of merchants. Is this kind of evil law that is purely biased towards the ruling class acceptable? Our law of man has obviously offended their interests. It is inevitable that we would be met with hostility and even boycotts at the start of spreading our religion. However, it is impossible to ban it. After all, our Wumianzi is a true god. Banning the spread of a true god is equivalent to rebelling against the entire order gods. Why do you think Wumianzi worked so hard to ascend to godhood? Isn't it all for this world? But it is meaningless to just not ban it. So, we need someone to set an example. If I am a commoner or a merchant, on one hand, they would treat me as a donkey and a slave. On the other hand, they would at least treat me as a human. Actually, there is no need for me to hesitate where I would choose to live and work hard. Sulphur Mountain City is the best example. With sufficient population and resources flowing in, it would definitely bring about wealth and power. This is necessary for any territory. Thus, the faith of the God of Law is extremely beneficial to the development of a territory. All we need is a role model. So, you came to the Mist Country. Little Roland, you actually scammed your own people. Aren't you worried that after you become the national religion, you might be met with hostility from the neighboring kingdoms? Have you considered the possibility of it being extinguished before it could even rise? Kelly frowns and says. Her worries are indeed very real. Of course, I have considered it. However, if the Donglan country goes on like this, wouldn't it be met with hostility? You are already surrounded by enemies on all sides. Since you are not far from destruction anyway, this is a pretty good straw to clutch at. Furthermore, if the God of Law becomes the national religion, With Sulphur Mountain City as an example, the country's strength would grow rapidly. Furthermore, a large number of Justice Knight and Judgmenters would greatly increase the country's defensive capabilities. Furthermore, they should be able to receive assistance from the origin of law, Sulphur Mountain City. No matter how I look at it, the pros outweigh the cons, and what if we still refuse to accept it? Nothing much, we are just waiting. When the law job class is spread all over the world, when the teachings and laws of the God of Law are widely known by the people, the accumulated hatred and conflicts will one day explode. When that time comes, what awaits the nobles isn't a gentle abdication. The guillotine will be used until it rusts from the blood, and the gallows will be filled with dried corpses. Kelly instinctively shudders, as though she can already see the arrival of that day. Renee raises her doubts. According to the teachings, initiating a war is also a heavy crime. Doesn't that mean that we can't unify the Mist Country anymore? Isn't that unfair to us? No, although initiating a war would indeed cause the law job class to lose the power of law, if it is a just war like aiding an ally that is being invaded or reclaiming a territory that has been taken away, it is allowed. Then, who will determine this justice? Beifeng, who has been silently taking notes, asks a question for the first time and actually hits the main point. The God of Law Wu Mianzi has 1 vote, the ruler has 1 vote, and the majority of the people have 1 vote. If all 3 votes are in favor of war, then this war should be just. Since Wu Mianzi has already turned into the embodiment of justice, his judgment should be fair and it should be acceptable to the believers. The questioner nods his head and sits down. The crowd starts asking new questions one by one. I have a question, Yuan. It is easy to explain. Initially, I just wanted to say it casually, but there are some things that can't be stopped once it starts. This lecture that is fated to be included in history continues for an entire day. Kolos, who was originally the lecturer, becomes the clerk. She buries her head to memorize the contents of today's lecture and distributes it to every believer. I can foresee that not long from now, the flower of law will bloom even more. Finally, from lecture to debate, from debate to lecture, when the marathon teaching of the teachings ends, Renee and Kelly look at each other and finally come to a conclusion. We, the Donglan Principality, have decided to recognize the God of Law as the national religion. However, you, Roland, have to be responsible for helping us to the end. Sigh, alright, I will just treat it as owing you all. Even though I grumble, the smile at the corner of my mouth can't fool anyone. Chapter 89. It was still that simple and crude palace, and it was still that young king. Dasos was playing chess with his old friend and subordinate. But from the way he kept making stupid moves and retreating step by step, his mind wasn't on the chessboard at all. In the past, he would use his superior chess skills to swiftly deal with his old friend and then start to talk business while the other party was depressed. But this time, he wasn't as calm as he used to be. Hermit, haven't you found her yet? Found her? Oh, that night princess. They changed their residence and are currently staying at the Church of the God of Law. Attacking the Church of the True God is a huge problem. Is it worth it for a woman? The one who spoke was a brown-haired young man with squinted eyes. He wore a monocle and looked refined. If one were to look at his appearance, no one would think that he was the chief intelligence officer of the Ottoman Empire. He was also the personal financial advisor of the emperor and one of the most influential people in the country. Don't joke with me. You know that I'm not looking for that little lass. I'm looking for the woman with the angel bloodline, the woman who was able to suppress the demon sword with a single hand. Dasos was able to tell that Svina was a woman in disguise with a single look because of his keen observation skills. After that day, he was also guessing if the 2 princesses who had the same face but completely opposite temperament were 2 different people. Gemini star, another Gemini who symbolizes inauspiciousness. No wonder the Mist royal family wanted to hide her existence. Alright, combining history and his imagination had a basis. At least in the eyes of Dasos, they were 2 completely different people. The most obvious evidence was the performance of the demon sword. Hermit, you should know how much I paid to awaken the Scarlet Conqueror to the 3rd stage. But that woman was able to tame the 3rd form of the demon sword right from the start. When she returned the demon sword to me, the emotions that the demon sword sent to me were actually pity, fear, and relaxation. There is only one explanation for this. The demon's sword actually submitted completely in front of her. I'm afraid that she is able to use the full form of the demon's sword. Impossible. This scarlet conqueror, forged by the tyrant of the Blood Sea, is always thirsty for blood. In order to use this sword, you have sacrificed at least 10,000 lives. Until now, we have to prepare hundreds of death row prisoners to sacrifice to the sword every year. How old is that girl? How can she suppress the demon's sword? But she did, didn't she? Is that why you want to propose to her? You're still unwavering even when you're rejected in person? No, I'm tired of looking at that delicate and fragile vase. I suddenly feel that the blood angel bathed in fresh blood is pretty good too. I'm really infatuated with that woman. What a pity, I didn't expect her to actually like women. What a pity. Are you going to give up? Then why are you still looking for her? Why do you think the Mist royal family is hiding this trump card? Do you think that they will obediently pledge their loyalty to me on the day of the enthronement ceremony? Do you think that the half-angel, who is so arrogant that she doesn't even look me in the eye, will kneel and pledge her loyalty to me on the day of the enthronement ceremony? Hermit shook his head as he recalled the war angel who was so proud that she wouldn't even touch the ground. Some people are born to not bow down to others. I don't think that she will bow down to anyone. But we don't have any other path of retreat. Either we get through this or we fall short and become a second-rate country. Yes, this enthronement ceremony to force the various countries to submit to us is a form of oppression towards the smaller countries. At the same time, it is also a challenge to the dignity and strength of the Ottoman Empire. If we succeed, we will naturally become a super empire. If we fail, the countries that were originally subordinate to us will be shaken and it isn't impossible for them to fall to a second-rate country. This is a huge gamble. It concerns the fate of the Ottoman Empire for the next 200 years. We can't afford to lose. I understand. At this moment, we can't afford any variables. I will send scouts to investigate the secrets of the people in Donglan. No, wait for a moment. It is enough to send a few demon vulture knights to keep an eye on them. I have already sent out the crows. If we keep an eye on them, it won't be convenient for them to do anything. Crows? They aren't trustworthy at all. They spend their days prophesying and calculating those ridiculous doomsday. They are really a bunch of lunatics. However, mad dogs are irrational. Their bites are usually very painful. As he spoke, Desos laughed out loud. Of course, he knew that crows weren't reliable. However, mad dogs also have their uses. If they are released to bite people, they don't need to be rational. I almost know why you called me here. Yes, with the Donglan Principality as the core, come up with a few more contingency plans. Do we need to prepare for the worst? Remove the Donglan Principality from the alliance this time. No, the worst possibility is that the Donglan Principality will lead the other countries to declare war on us. Moreover, our military forces will be pinned down. Hermit nodded. He understood Desos. Preparing for the worst was an old habit of his. However, this didn't mean that he didn't have the confidence to complete the enthronement ceremony. On the contrary, the fact that he had prepared so many plans in advance showed that he was determined to win the alliance. Others thought that he was a straightforward and ambitious person who didn't care about trifles. Only those who grew up with him knew that Desos's greatest strength was his meticulousness. Perhaps, it was because he was prepared for all kinds of terrible situations that he was able to reach where he was today. Don't be anxious. Chess is played step by step. Let's use mad dogs to test the waters first. Ha, you are distracted. Checkmate, I won. To me, getting the envoy from the East Mist communal country to stay with us wasn't just a sudden idea without a purpose. There were still 3 months before the enthronement ceremony. It wasn't too long, but it wasn't too short either. It would be inconceivable if Desos didn't do something to regain his face in his own territory, the capital. Moreover, the relationship between me and the diplomatic mission would inevitably become closer and closer. Rather than being discovered to be overly suspicious in the future, it would be better to directly contact them. If we were together, it would be convenient for security, And I could also conveniently teach that little girl a lesson. As for the Church of the God of Law, it could only be considered as a pleasant surprise. Initially, we only intended to build a court here as a place for law jobs to train and learn. Without the support of the local authority, it would be impossible for us to conduct trials. On the other hand, arbitration could still be conducted as planned. Trials are based on the authority and the laws as the rules to judge crimes. It is a way to deal with crimes from a higher position. On the other hand, arbitration is where both parties to the contract and the arbitrator are on equal footing, and it is agreed that the arbitrator will be the one to make the decision. Without a doubt, in a place where the authority doesn't recognize the law jobs will be involved in arbitration for a long period of time. But in reality, due to the lack of authority, arbitration requires a higher understanding of the law. In a certain world, one must have at least 8 years of experience in the legal profession before they can be involved in arbitration. Of course, this is just a big talk. In reality, when it comes down to it, it is just a small matter. Aunt Lee, didn't Uncle Lee just owe you 3 silver coins? He said that he would return it to you in 2 months. Don't be angry, 2 months. After 2 months, it will be at least 4 silver coins with interest. 3.5. 4. All right. I will be the middleman. Aunt Lee, give me a little more time and Uncle Lee will return me a little more interest. How about 4 silver coins after 3 months? Deal. Agreed. Although it seems ridiculous, in reality, this is how arbitration is done. The only difference is the amount of money involved and whether the parties involved are individuals, merchant guilds, or organizations. Of course, if both parties are unable to come to an agreement, the law job as the arbitrator can forcefully make an arbitration in front of Wu Mianxi's divine statue. In that case, one party's interests will be harmed and at that time, the arbitration will be carried out using Wu Mianxi's god power. Without authority, there is no jurisdiction. Naturally, there is no right to judge crimes. But based on the principle of freedom of contract, the law job can become the middleman and borrow Wu Mianxi's god power and divine concept to do civil arbitration. The arbitration system has been in operation in Sulphur Mountain City for a few decades, but it is something new on the surface. Very quickly, the sensitive merchants discovered the advantages of this system. Its greatest advantage is that it is fast, very fast. In the past, if it was just a contract or a product dispute, it would take at least 1 to 2 years to settle the lawsuit in the local court. Even if the civil compensation is paid, the merchant might have already gone bankrupt. That is the classic case of winning the lawsuit but losing your life. And if the contract involves a certain noble or high official, then you can only blame it on your bad luck. On the other hand, arbitration only involved 3 parties, so reaching an agreement was extremely fast. Usually, it would only take a few days. To merchants, time was life. Not to mention, the contract and arbitration in front of the gods were under Wu Mianxi's protection, so no one dared to refuse to honor it. That strange magic incantation, forceful execution of the contract made it impossible for rich people to hide. Kajisi City, which is built along the river, is connected to all directions. It is a famous business city with merchants gathering. This new way of settling disputes immediately spread from 1 to 10 and 10 to 100. To think that there is a god to guarantee the fairness of the contract. I don't have to worry about those ruffians going against their words anymore. This is great. Thus, when new business contracts are signed, they don't forget to add a clause: if there is a dispute, go to XX Land's Church of Law for arbitration. Thus, in less than a week, this court was squeezed in by thousands of new believers, directly rising to the level of a local church. Alright, according to the rules of the gods, when there are enough believers, the true god Wu Mianxi starts to pay attention to this place, and this place becomes his holy land. The Church of Law branch in Kajisi City is born. When the law of humans still needs a long time to receive the support of the sovereign and step onto the stage of history, this new arbitration system becomes a powerful weapon for the true god of law Wu Mianxi to expand his faith. And such a thing happens in many corners of the Asia continent. Thus, in the divine realm of another plane, Wu Mianxi is currently obtaining his first derivative divine job, God of Contracts. The essence of fairness is written into the content of freedom of contracts. He, who is a weak god, is gradually evolving into a mid-level god. Ah! I didn't expect this at all. Adding an arbitration system to the law is something I casually did by imitating the judicial system of my previous world. I really didn't expect that this arbitration system, which wasn't valued much in my previous world, would blossom and bear fruit in this other world. In this chaotic medieval world, this kind of neutral contract guarantee, enforcement, and dispute resolution is indeed in high demand. The reason why it wasn't popular in my previous world is probably due to the lack of a sovereign guarantee. Even if arbitration results, it would be difficult to enforce it. And in this magical world where a true god acts as the guarantor of contracts, arbitration is naturally much more powerful. And to me, such accidents are naturally the more the merrier. And this accident also made me start to take this physical body and the bloodline of the arbiter seriously. On the left is chaos, on the right is order, and I stand in the middle as an arbiter. The result will definitely be offending both sides at the same time. System, are you reminding me that my goal is a typical example of strenuous and unrewarding work? The local churches are already under the watchful eyes of the true gods. The God of law doesn't build churches, which means that he doesn't throw churches everywhere for the sake of preaching. Attacking a church is no different from slapping the face of a god, and as a resident, the safety of us would naturally soar. But even so, I can still see dozens of spies among the visiting believers. Hey, big brother, it is indeed a good idea for a big bloke like you to disguise as a traveling merchant, but can you change out of your military boots? They still have the emblem of the Azure Dragon Knight Order on them. Hee. Does your family use high-quality military horses to transport the fodder carriages? Is the money you earn enough to feed them with oats? The emblem of nobility on your sword. Can you be more professional? To think that you can still laugh. Alright, regardless of whether I am interested in the Donglan Principality that shone brilliantly that day or the church of this new true god, the way this city expresses its hospitality to its guests is really too much for me to handle. Lord Oracle, if you have the time to play with them, why don't you come and help us? After the judgment court was upgraded to a local church, Kolos, who has the highest rank in the church, fell for the same trick again and was forced to become a local bishop. But unfortunately, even though she was promoted, not only did she not get a raise in salary, she didn't get more subordinates either. Instead, her workload increased exponentially. This wasn't a large church, but the merchants were all impatient to come here to resolve the accumulated contract disputes. The average number of visitors was over 100, and the queue had already reached Beifeng's stall outside the courtyard. As for the receptionists and arbiters, there were 2 grey elves, Kolos, and her 2 subordinates, which added up to a total of 5 people. It was all over. Although Kolos was doing her best to raise the first batch of divine clergy, it was still too early for them to start from scratch. Right now, it would be up to Kolos and the others to work overtime. That was why, even though Kolos became much more respectful towards me after that lecture, she couldn't help but get angry when she saw me, who clearly had a good understanding of the law, idling around all day. Lord Oracle, if you have the time, can you help me take a look at the Goblin Merchant's contract? There are some parts that I'm hesitant about, and I need your explanation. Haha, I still have some matters to attend to today. Let's talk about it when I get back. After saying that, I unhesitatingly turned around and ran. Kolos wanted to chase after me, but the sea of people in front of me forced her to stop helplessly. This time, I really wasn't trying to avoid it. I really did have matters to attend to. Today, I had an appointment with someone. My destination wasn't too far away. It was an empty field with few people. I leaned against it under a rotting old tree and poured some wine on the ground. The grey fog gathered to form a silver spectre, but it didn't have the usual coldness and fierceness of a vengeful spirit. This was an existence that was somewhere between a ghost and a Valkyrie. Hey, Uncle Cain, I'm here again. I've already resolved your granddaughter's matter. The tuition fees I left behind are enough for her to use for 10 years. This time, you can give me your sword, right? After receiving Harloise's hint, if I still couldn't find my target, wouldn't I be too useless? I found Cain's soul on the first day, but unfortunately, even though I chatted with him about many things over the past few days and even helped him a lot, Cain still remained tight-lipped about his sword. Lad, I've already seen your sincerity. So, let me tell you a story. If I had a mirror, I would definitely be embarrassed. This spectre was very much like an NPC in a game. First, he would run errands for me, then he would tell me his background story. Most of the story was about him, and in the end, he would even have to guide him to heaven. The village was threatened by the magical beasts and the enemy's army could pass through his outpost at any moment. That young knight was faced with a dilemma. Should he obey the king's orders and guard the outpost loyally, watching as the village in danger was destroyed, or should he disobey the orders and abandon the honor of a knight to protect the village? Young lad, if it were you, what would you choose? All right, I knew that it would be such a question. This was as unsolvable as saving one's wife or one's mother after falling into the water. Not answering it was the best answer. But to me, I had already done too many of these unsolvable questions. From the very start, the answer wasn't even within the scope of the questions. I would take action in advance and first complete the mission before going to protect the village. Or I could just kill off the magical beasts that threatened the village before pulling the villagers over to help me complete the mission. The simplest way would be to bring all of the villagers along with me to guard the outpost. This doesn't meet the requirements. Whose requirements? The one who came up with the question? Or did you set the requirements yourself? As long as the results are good, there's no point in caring about the process. No, that's impossible. I can't do any of the things that you asked for. Even if you can't do it, I can. To be honest, if I were in your position, I would have thought of a way to eradicate the magical beasts before they pose a threat to me. Besides, even if you can't do it, can't you call for help? They also have their own mission. How can they use their personal matters to tarnish the honor of another knight? This is an old concept from that era. No wonder you couldn't get over it even after a few decades. I am here to test if you have the ability to do what I can't do. The old knight immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. All right, as expected, we still have to fight at the end. 19 seconds, including the time needed to draw and sheath the sword, the undead binding formation that I had set up long ago was activated. A holy knight's signature skill, dispel the undead. Then, I raised my sword and struck Cain, causing the bound Cain to fall to the ground. This isn't fair, what? Do you think that I will be like those foolish knight and compete with you in swordsmanship when you reached legend rank? After fighting for 300 rounds, I was defeated by you. Didn't you say whether it's fair for a legend rank expert to bully a bronze rank rookie? Look, it's so easy. Young man, could it be that I was wrong? After hesitating for a moment, I gave the final answer. No, you weren't wrong. The choice that you made is worthy of our respect. The one that was wrong is the world that forced you to make such a cruel choice. The old knight saved the village, but because of that, he didn't complete his mission and lost the honor and status of a knight. Because of that, his family was implicated as well. For the rest of his life, he constantly questioned himself on whether he was wrong or not. In the end, he died of depression. Pale Justice is the name of his soul sword. It is also the cry that he constantly interrogates his own soul. Am I wrong? Could it be that upholding justice is wrong? Should I just watch as the village is destroyed? Loka Town, the village that you saved back then. It has been 70 years and it has grown from a village with a population of 300 to a small town with a population of close to 10,000. You did well. Is that so? That's great. After finishing his words, Cain's soul starts to dissipate with a smile on his face. The only thing that remains is the ice tear stone that is emitting a cold white light. Pale Justice Soulstone contains a portion of the soul and power of the legend rank Holy Knight Cain. Fuse it with Cain's sword to obtain the complete Pale Justice. What does it matter whether justice is pale or not? As long as one is able to act according to one's conscience, what does it have to do with the voices of the outside world? This is what I wanted to say, but in the end, I didn't say it. To the old Cain, the evaluation of the later generations isn't important. The continued prosperity of the village that he saved is enough to prove that his choice wasn't wrong. So, what else is there to say? But reality is often crueler than a fairy tale. Loka town? There was indeed such a place before, but it has already disappeared in history. At that time, the kings were fighting for the throne and the flames of war were everywhere. In the past 70 years, the place has experienced at least 5 destructive wars. Even if the villagers survived, they should have died in the wars that followed. This is the answer that I got from the Civil Affairs Department. Touching the soul stone that is emitting a cold radiance, I shook my head. The road is long, let's take it slow. Suddenly, I thought of something again. That's not right. Aren't I going to look for Cain's sword? Who knows where he lost it? Did I get tricked again? The village has already disappeared in history. Where am I going to find a sword? Old man, are you still there? Can you point the way before you ascend to heaven? Chapter 90. The Celestial Tower, to me, is a name that leaves a deep impression on me, but one that should have long disappeared into the past. They are currently an internationally renowned evil organization. In the eyes of the world, they are similar to the famous Druil Radical Society, Druil association that treats animals kindly, a bunch of rabid dogs that bite anyone they catch. Just like how every notorious organization would have a lofty banner in the beginning, the Celestial Tower was also built with lofty ideals in the beginning. Regardless of whether it is the astrologer who is proficient in stargazing, the witches who are proficient in divination, or the mags who are proficient in divination, from a certain perspective, they are all able to predict the future. Thus, under the call of a highly respected mage, an organization with the goal of using divination to make life better and avoid disasters that can be avoided was established. Then, how did an organization with such good intentions turn into the infamous rabid dogs it is today? Initially, the Celestial Tower's early warning of natural disasters was indeed effective. In that era, it was different from the current useless divination magic. The divination magic system back then was rather developed and effective. Through the connection with the god of fate and the thread of fate, they were able to avoid natural disasters and disasters. After a golden period of development, roughly around AD 200, the Celestial Tower met with a problem. No matter how much they paid, they were unable to predict what would happen after a certain period of time. In the end, they came to a conclusion. Starting from a certain year, the Asia continent was actually a blank slate. If it was a lone diviner, he would only think of his own limits. However, when all of the diviners came to the same conclusion, there is only one explanation: the world is destroyed and there is no future. Alright, even though predicting the end of the world isn't a good thing, at the very least, knowing that it will happen, they should be able to think of a way to overcome it. However, the outcome was futile. No matter how they prophesied and divined, there was only one answer: this world has no future and they are unable to determine where the destruction will come from. Of course, I can understand the reason why they are unable to make a prophecy. All life in this world originates from order and chaos. Naturally, you are unable to predict where the destruction will come from and where the destruction will come from. Alright, this was just like the torturous period of death row inmates waiting for their execution. Unable to get an answer, they could only watch helplessly as the end of the world approached day by day. They fell into despair, but a coincidence gave them hope. Due to the interference of the Celestial Tower, a certain young man who was prophesied to become a hero met with an accident. After which, that future became invisible. Will the prophet's actions affect the future? The early death of historical heroes and great figures would have an impact on the entire history. If there were enough fluctuations in the fate of the entire world, would the doomed world still be able to survive? Alright, desperate times call for desperate measures. Under this indescribable logic, the Celestial Tower seems to have found the most direct method to change the future, killing heroes and historical figures in advance. An ordinary seer would try their best to prevent their prophecies from affecting their targets. However, the Celestial Tower, who did the exact opposite, began their crazy actions hunting down historical figures, causing the future to be unknown. This isn't an easy task. After all, it is hard for a targeted prophecy to reach a proper conclusion. Most of the time, prophecies are based on luck. If the seer were to actively participate in the prophecy, it would cause the outcome of the prophecy to be messed up. However, if that unlucky fellow were to be caught red-handed, even if he were to become a legendary hero in the future, Would he be able to resist it in his infancy? The Dragon Slayer, the hero who saved the world, was slandered as the son of a demon. The great craftsman who invented advanced technology was treated as an unpardonable villain. The saintess who saved the country from danger was treated as a witch and burned alive. The highly respected seers in the past became liars who spouted nonsense. Under their reckless actions, the path of fate became a mess. Without a doubt, this is equivalent to flipping the table in a game that they are destined to lose. In any case, they will die in the end. Who knows, there might be more variables in the outcome. This is the hysteria of the seers who were forced into a corner. Due to them going overboard, the line of fate of the god of fate turned into a mess, alarming the order gods who didn't interfere much with the mortal world. They sent down a god's punishment, destroying the headquarters of the celestial tower. Only then did they calm down. After the god's punishment, the god of fate retracted most of the prophecy abilities and prophecy spells that he left in the mortal world. Furthermore, he severed the connection between his own hall of fate and the seers in the mortal world, causing the standard of prophecy in the entire world to plummet. That was a matter that happened 1,600 years ago. Even now, the prophecy of the apocalypse still hasn't arrived. Instead, the crime of killing a future hero has surfaced. Naturally, the celestial tower becomes a huge joke. However, I know that their prophecy isn't wrong. A calamity is right before our eyes. From then on, prophecy against a certain person's future became the greatest taboo for a seer. Most of the seers in the modern era only prophesize about events and not people. However, it is apparent that the celestial tower isn't completely destroyed because of this. They are still secretly carrying out their past actions in a corner. However, it is hard to tell whether they are going crazy in order to save the world or if they are simply taking revenge on the order gods and the entire world. 300 years ago, the prophecy regarding me and Cavendish was made by them. Furthermore, the reason why we were forced into a corner by them is also due to them interfering in the dark. In my travels in the future, I discovered their dark hands hiding in the shadows. Thus, after turning into Lord Yongyur, I dug them out from the corners one by one and killed them over and over again. However, it is a pity that looking at the charred corpse in front of me, the constellation of stars and the emblem of a single eye on his finger, it seems that I didn't do enough back then. Dead remnants of the celestial tower, you all sure have guts to appear in front of me. In the pitch-black room, the seats are lit up one by one. The participants are silent as usual. Finally, the person on the main seat speaks up. Dasos is already rushing us. Has the spy not reported back yet? HMPH, the king of winter wolves. Lord Lamos, actually, I think that we should kill him first and not work together with him. Calm down. Our current goal is to wipe out the mist bloodline. We can talk about the other matters later. It has already been a week and there is still no news. Dasos has already expressed his dissatisfaction with us. It isn't wrong to say that they are mad dogs. When the prophecy spell is no longer as developed as it was in the ancient times, their target has changed from future heroes and historical figures to heroes and influential figures. Any high-ranking person who works with them has to be on tenterhooks as they might stab them in the back at any moment. You should know that the Church of True Gods belongs to the territory of gods. The prophecy spell of humans is greatly discounted and our spy has also met with some trouble. We sent out a few Druil who can transform into crows. In the church, Kagio is dozing off under a tree. However, a migratory bird flies past the sky and a long golden line streaks across the sky. A wild goose falls to the ground and a few knight hurriedly runs over to pick it up. This free game is just the perfect addition for dinner. Although I don't know why Brother Roland wants me to intercept all the birds, it is a good opportunity for me to train my archery skills. All of the crows were shot down by the archers. If it wasn't for the fact that they ran fast enough, they might have been turned into dinner. Looks like they are prepared. Where are our scouts? Our master thief is here. They were all blown up into the sky. The courtyard is filled with goblin dark mines and various kinds of serial bombs and alarm robots. It is even more heavily guarded than the Goblin Bank. We suspect that there are at least 4 to 5 master engineers stationed in the church. At the corner of the courtyard, Grim is doing something. However, just as he is halfway through, he pricks up his ears and grabs his basket to run. As expected, there are people chasing after him. Darned grim, you are burying mines everywhere again. How many times have I told you that engineering products are dangerous objects and you can't just throw them around? What if they explode passers-by? Even if they don't explode outsiders, it's not good if they explode flowers and plant. Look at how many times we have repaired the walls and courtyard in the past few days. Yesterday, when I met a mason, he actually asked me if I wanted to register for a monthly ticket. Say, if I were to change the Church of the Law to the Church of the God of Explosions, would Wu Mianzi strike me down with a bolt of lightning? Hey, listen to me, stop running. Dear, finally, he has a name. He is a law incantation user who follows Kolos around. His characteristics. Yep, everyone should have seen it. He is extremely talkative. However, he seems to be the natural enemy of the silent grim, which is why I unhesitatingly gave him the task of watching over the maniac of explosions. Where is our master spy, Phoenix Butterfly? He can easily disguise himself as a believer and enter. With his experience, he should be able to fool the Holy Knight who seems to be strolling around but is actually guarding the entrance. She, Phoenix Butterfly, is known as the Man of 1,000 Faces. He is especially skilled at disguising himself as all kinds of women. This time, he successfully disguised himself as a noblewoman and successfully got close to his main target, Princess Renee. However, strike of condemnation. What followed was a silver holy sword that flickered with silver light. It spun and flew out diagonally. Hee, I accidentally let it slip from my hand. No matter how hard Renee tries to act cute, she is unable to hide the fact that she actually swung her sword and turned it into a flying sword. Kelly shakes her head helplessly. Although Renee has improved rapidly after switching to become a Justice Knight, even though Roland's teachings are methodical, her talent in swordsmanship, which has long passed her maturation stage, is still too lousy. At the very least, within a short period of time, her swordsmanship is still so lousy that it is hard for one to look at it directly. Looking at the direction where the sword flew to, she sees Roland's sacred sword pierced between the thighs of a noblewoman. She immediately panics. Priest, come quickly. There is an injured person. UN. Man. Spy. Knight, come over. You should contact the coffin shop first. Hearing that his most capable spy was exposed for no reason, as the head of the Ottoman branch of the Celestial Tower, Lamo's Eye, is in disbelief. I feel that as long as we get close to that church, something will happen. Is that the Church of the God of Law or the Church of the God of Misfortune? Damn it. Right, where is our Master of Stealth? Shadowless Walker Decayer? There has never been a place that he couldn't enter. What happened to him? He isn't an opponent who would be defeated by misfortune. Could it be that even he failed? He, Shadowless Walker Decayer, is extremely famous in certain regions. It is said that there isn't a treasure vault that he can't enter. He once stole the treasure of the Blue Dragon. Lamo's Eye had to spend a lot of effort to invite him into the guild. He is just a silver rank thief, but what allows him to do as he pleases is a legendary artifact. Saw Cloak, legendary artifact. The wearer transforms into a rat and gains 95% physical damage immunity. Relying on this artifact, he is able to casually sneak into the treasure vault of any kingdom. Even if he were to meet a powerful enemy who sees through his transformation, he is still able to make use of his physical damage immunity to escape. Witch Lord's last message was, how can there be a cat that knows magic? It is already time for dinner at the Church of the God of Law. When a certain cat jumps onto the table, I pick it up and throw it to the side. Go play at the side. Who knows if you ate dead rats and cockroaches? Bastard, I am not a real cat. Furthermore, even if I was a real cat, I would be served with meat and fish every day. Even if I were to catch rats, I would only be playing with them. Why would I eat them? H. I originally wanted to show you a treasure. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. Forget it. What treasure? Hearing the word treasure, my heart is moved. Hee, a transformation cloak. It suits you very well. Why don't you try it on? Hee, do you think that I am a fool? For you to give me such a good thing, it must be a cursed item. Will I transform into a rat or a squirrel? It can't be that I will transform into a slime, right? Looks like I guessed correctly. You darned cat, there isn't any dinner for you anymore. Go eat rats. At the same time, in the courtyard, a short figure covered in wounds is struggling in the bushes. Damn it, what a scary meow alien. To think that it knows martial arts and even trains in both magic and martial arts. I almost died in its hands. Cough, luckily it took the cloak and left. Cough, I vomited blood again. Looks like my injuries aren't light. I won't be able to climb over the wall or the main door. Then, I will go through the saws. He struggles to open the entrance of the saws and barely manages to squeeze himself in. However, he realizes that someone is already one step ahead of him and is waiting for him in the saws. How could there be someone here? If it's someone from the same trade, then it'll be fine. Please make way. Wait, it isn't a real person. It is a goblin self-destructing dummy. To actually go through the saws. Who is so bored? Boom. Boom. This time, there is obviously a lot of explosives. The entire house is shaking. When my gaze turns towards the dining table, Grim immediately stands up to report. Report, according to your instructions, all the unstable explosives have been thrown into the saws for disposal. Saws? Hehe, whose thief is so unlucky? Don't worry, Grim, you did well. Keep up the good work. Ding. Congratulations, your Aura of Plague has harmed the 100th target and upgraded to Aura of Misfortune. The effects of the aura has been increased by 50% and it will prioritize harming your enemies. There are already 100 of them, is 1,000 still far away? Please keep up the good work. That child is really unlucky. However, you better go and chat with him. There is an old friend of yours there. At this moment, the system is unwilling to be left out. When I really reach the site of the explosion, I notice the familiar astrologer's emblem. Naturally, I know that I have met an old friend and I immediately fly into a rage. Something like a rabid dog is bound to form a nest if you see one. Kelly, I will leave this place to you. Diana and Kolos, follow me. We are going to hunt a rabid dog. Chapter 91. The Celestial Tower is very troublesome. From the day they became the public enemy of the world, they split up and hid underground. Most of their members are spellcasters. There are priests, druil, mags, warlocks, witches, and witch doctors. Regardless of the race, spellcasters are rare and precious. Thousands of years of secret inheritance gave these spellcasters sufficient strength and connections. In this world, strength and connections can easily be exchanged for authority, not to mention the help of divination magic. The most dangerous aspect of the Celestial Tower is that their members are usually hiding in the upper echelons of the humans and elves. Even among the members, they only use code names. No one would know which member is hiding before they go crazy, making them extremely secretive and hard to guard against. A bunch of venomous snakes hiding by one side, ready to bite one at any moment. No matter how one thinks about it, it sends chills down one's spine. After realizing that I am being targeted by the Celestial Tower, even though it is already deep into the night, I still rush out of the door without hesitation. I understand them. If the spies that I have recently are their eyes, this bunch of troublesome people doesn't know the meaning of restraint and moderation. The failure of the investigation will only cause them to take risks out of desperation. Thus, rather than waiting for them to come knocking on my door, I might as well take the initiative to attack. But the moment I step out of the door, I remember a small problem. Harlois, whose Celestial Tower ring is this? Sniff it and find it for me. Sniff. Sniff your sister. I am a cat, not a dog. No, I am not a cat either. It is all your unfilial disciples' fault. Alright, looking at this stupid cat who keeps biting my finger, I don't want to remind her that in front of my titan body, her claws and teeth are unable to break through my defense. Heh. How can you belittle yourself? The potential of a cat alien is limitless and they can conquer the world. Alright, stop biting me. I am not joking. I will get straight to the point. I added a new function for you previously. New function? No wonder I have been feeling weird for the past 2 days. I will fight it out with you. Sit down. Hand. Harlois immediately sits in a dog position before sticking out her tongue and extending her cat paws. This is one of the new functions, specially prepared for the Queen of Banshees, who is getting more and more disobedient. Woo-woo, you are too much. I have already agreed to work together with you. I am already in this state because of you. How can you still treat me like this? No matter what, I am still your teacher. The tearful cat alien looks exceptionally pitiful. Diana and Kolos, who are the spectators, are filled with sympathy. They even start glaring at me, the cat abuser. Stop grabbing me. Have you forgotten our magic pet contract? Your emotions can be transmitted to me. Do you think I don't know if you're really crying or not? Alright, the next second, the tears stopped flowing. The black cat's face actually showed a contemplative expression. After a while, it sent me a message. Alright, the next, the cat alien I can give you. As long as you promise to help me take revenge on two people, no, two gods, until they fall, I will obediently become your pet, dedicating all of my strength and knowledge to you. I can even transform into a physical body to serve you in bed. Although I have never touched a man before, my techniques are definitely not inferior to the Dark Elves. Even though it is a flirtatious topic, even though it is in the form of a cute cat, the endless hatred towards the gods has turned into a tangible black fog. The hatred and venom in her words and eyes are still so terrifying. Even though Kolos and Diana didn't hear anything, they instinctively raise their weapons in defense. Perhaps, this cursed black cat that brings misfortune is the true form of the Queen of Banshees as an undead. Time brings endless power and knowledge to a person. Even though she fell into my hands by accident, she was unable to make a comeback. I have never dared to underestimate Harlois. It is precisely because I dare not underestimate her that I unhesitatingly used the once-in-a-lifetime magic pet contract to forcefully bind her to my side. I definitely believe that if I am not around, she can turn the entire underground world upside down by herself. You don't have to talk about serving me in bed. I am not Bayfeng, nor am I an idiot who will be fooled by a fake physical body. Two gods. Tell me who it is first before I can consider it. If you tell me that it is Ale and Roland, I will definitely not be able to deal with them. Naturally, I won't agree to it. Harlois mentally spits out two names and stares at me expectantly. If I am not mistaken, they are both true gods of the elven faction. One is already on my list of long-term targets, while the other is an old acquaintance of mine. Since it is convenient for me, I can make this deal. So it is the former guardian god of the elves. Should I say that traitors are more hated than murderers? Fine. Great, it is settled then. Chem. Don't we need to sign a contract? Keeping promises is one of your few strong points. Since you have agreed, it is more effective than any other contract. If we really sign a contract, I will be taking advantage of you, and I will still have to worry about you finding loopholes and going back on your word. It seems that she really understands me. The latter half of her sentence is the main point. Perhaps it is the misophobia of a lawyer. I am indeed a misophobe when it comes to promises that I personally make. However, if it is a forced or obviously unfair contract, I will most likely go back on my word. In modern civil law, contracts that are obviously unfair or forced can be cancelled. However, in this world, Roland conforms to the current mainstream of society and sets a contract that cannot be cancelled. Alright, I will write it in my log. Now you can rest easy, right? Hurry up and fulfill the duties of a pet dog. This time, Harlois didn't retort. Instead, she excitedly somersaulted and obediently sniffed the ring in my hand. After a few seconds, this stupid cat fell into deep thought. What's wrong? Your current sense of smell should be a special magical sense of smell. It is at least twice as strong as that of a typical police dog. Have you still not noticed? After a while, Harlois finally raised her head with a hesitant expression. There is only a burnt stench, I can't smell anything at all. This time, it was our turn to stare at each other. Thinking about that burnt corpse, it is only natural that she couldn't smell anything. But soon after, Harlois suddenly ran towards the courtyard. I remember that there is still a cloak of his. Alright, volunteering to work and being forced to serve are two completely different things. 2 minutes later, we had another companion. Casio, who was almost bored to death, volunteered to go with us. Considering the hunting and tracking abilities that a centaur archer should possess, I didn't reject him. Wait, if Casio goes, I will go as well. Someone volunteered to join us, but we tried our best to ignore him. In terms of tracking ability, a beast tamer is definitely much stronger than a pure archer. There is no one in this city that I can't find. What do you want? This fellow might seem honest, but in reality, he is exceptionally cunning. Furthermore, he is the classic example of someone who wouldn't wake up without benefits. How could he possibly volunteer? Beifeng nods his head. That cloak that can transform into a rat, it should be the legendary saw cloak. Alright, I really don't want to ask any more, nor do I want to think about what he intends to do with that cloak. If it wasn't for the fact that time is of the essence, I would have already started beating him up. But considering that a beast tamer is indeed skilled in tracking, what he said is the truth. I can only temporarily suppress the urge to beat him up in my heart and feign civility with him. Just as I was about to agree, the excited Beifeng blows a silent whistle, as though he has come to a conclusion from my expression. In an instant, a few stray dogs run over, a few rats crawl out of the underground pipes, and even an owl descends from the sky. You bastard, you win. Deal. Wait, I don't need it anymore. Not far away, 2 tattered carriages are parked in an alley. A few black-clothed men are stealthily moving haystacks down from the carriages. At the corner of the church, there is already a small pile of haystacks and a black-clothed man is lighting a fire. However, perhaps due to the strong wind at night, he failed to light the fire several times. Now, he is angrily throwing the match on the ground and stepping on it. There is a spellcaster who is obviously maintaining a concealment magic. But even if he is able to conceal it, I can still see him from my position. Looking at that unlucky fellow, I can't help but think of a rumor. It is said that due to offending the god of fate too thoroughly, the god of fate, Casio, who wields both luck and misfortune, placed a malevolent curse on this cockroach-like organization. As long as one joins this organization, the system of karma will be activated and they will forever be at the lowest point of their lives. Under normal circumstances, if one's luck is bad, it is easy for them to fail in their tasks, stepping on dog poop or getting bitten by a cat while walking, so it is fine as long as they are careful. However, if they meet my halo of plague, it should be called the halo of broom now. Those whose luck is worse than mine will cause a series of accidents, and this kind of misfortune becomes fatal. In the end, all misfortune will turn into unlucky opportunities. What are you waiting for? Get rid of this bunch of unlucky fellows. Alright, other than that mage, this bunch of unlucky fellows who came to burn down the church of a true god are just the lowest level pawns, so they are dealt with in an instant. Then, under the furious Beifeng's interrogation, our destination is clear. The temporary station is the royal family's astrology platform. That really suits their identity. But, since they are able to use the royal facilities, there is a certain emperor who is unwilling to lose face just like that. Why don't we reconsider? Considering this point, Diana, who has been getting closer to Renee and the others recently, hesitates. If we were to anger the Ottoman Emperor once more, given that we are currently in the territory of the Ottoman Empire, it is one thing for us to escape, but the envoy from the Donglan Principality will be implicated as well. This should be his way of probing us. If we were to cower and show our fear, he would only become more vicious in the future. Since he is playing according to the rules of the shadows, naturally, we have to follow suit. If he stretches out his hand, we will chop off his hand. If he stretches out his claws, we will chop off his claws. At the very least, we have to make him feel pain. Besides, the Mist bloodline. The Mist bloodline never fears a challenge. They are here for us, so how can we cower? Cowering will only make the villains even more savage. It seems that the battle outside the city walls has attracted the attention of the people in the church. The Royal Knight escorts Kelly and Renee out. Renee's words make me nod my head slightly. However, what she says next causes Kelly and the knight to pale in fright. I want to go too. Big brother Roland, didn't you say that the battlefield is always the best classroom? You also said that I am in dire need of actual combat experience. Nonsense. You are just causing trouble for everyone. More importantly, you are courting death. Kelly immediately berates her, hoping that Renee will give up on the idea of risking her life. It is indeed nonsense. I can't help but burst into laughter. We are a bunch of legend rank and gold rank pinnacle warriors. What is an iron rank rookie like you joining in? A stray bullet would be enough to kill you. Accumulating battle experience isn't something that can be done so easily. Someone has completely forgotten that he is only bronze rank. I am already 14 years old. Legend has it that Prince Roland went to the battlefield at the age of 12. I have had enough of this fake knight princess title. I want this glorious title to live up to its name. If I can't even deal with such a small situation, how am I going to go on the battlefield in the future? Even when facing the berating of her family, the young lady bit her lower lip tightly. Although she didn't say a word, her face was filled with stubbornness. It is obvious that she isn't willing to give up just like that. I look over. Renee's legs are still trembling slightly. However, the Roland sacred sword by her waist is emitting a dazzling silver light, as though it is acknowledging her choice. The Roland sacred sword is the sword of the legendary Saint Knight Prince Roland. Only his descendants and inheritors of the will are able to obtain the acknowledgement of this sacred sword. Inheritors of the will? At this moment, I inexplicably recall the conditions to use the Roland sacred sword. I recall that 300 years ago, it was because of my father's death in battle that Cavendish and I were allowed to go to the battlefield. Recalling that the past of the girl in front of me is shockingly similar to mine, I smile. Inheritors of the will? All right, keep up, don't fall behind. Kelly, just like back then, some people are fated to be unable to be nurtured in a greenhouse. However, Bayfoam, protect her well. If anything were to happen to her, your cloak will be gone. Ignoring the beast tamer who was overjoyed by my words, I also apologized to the worried Kelly in my heart and took the lead to lead the way. Damned leftovers, let's settle the interest of the past first. Once again, the system jumps out and furiously rewards its existence. Special quest, the inheritance of the will of the legendary Saint Knight Roland has been triggered. During the completion of the epic tier quest, Revival of the Mist, 1/3 of the fate points that you obtain from killing enemies will be transferred to the wielder of the sacred sword, Renee. You can use the fate points to strengthen her. System notification. The completion of the special quest is directly related to the completion of your epic tier quest. As long as Renee dies in battle, or she loses the Roland sacred sword forever, both of the quests will fail. However, after becoming a girl, you can consider becoming a real princess. You will definitely be more powerful than Renee. I definitely won't fail. Before I die, Renee definitely won't die. Alright, my unhesitatingly roar and declaration of protection rouses the morale of the knight, but it also causes a certain princess to blush. Chapter 92. Blade Transformation. Following my command, a certain black cat starts to change its form. The metal slime follows the template and transforms its body. A few seconds later, a jet-black two-handed sword appears in front of me. It is an unusually simple military-made weapon without any fancy carvings or decorations. It is so simple that it looks like a shoddy weapon that the city guards use. The blade is full of cuts, as though it could break at any moment. However, it exudes an indescribable killing intent, as though it is a veteran that has returned from 100 battles. Pale Justice, Fake, Two-handed Sword. Requirement, Strength 12+. Attack Power, 5 to 15. Rarity, Excellent. Special Effect, None Man-Made Magic Sword. This sword is the incarnation of the familiar Harlois. Although she doesn't feel any pain in this state and isn't afraid of being torn apart, it is best not to use it against a weapon that is 2 grades higher than you. Also, treat her a little better. Otherwise, if she suddenly disintegrates when you are hacking at her, Elemental Control, Beginner increases all elemental magic damage by 25%. The blade deals 5 points of designated elemental damage. Current attribute, Ice. I have already found the Blade of Pale Justice. However, due to some reason, I am temporarily unable to retrieve it. This sword is a replica made by Harlois based on the original. The only special effect is the magic amplification effect from Harlois' soul. Rather than calling it a magic sword, it would be more appropriate to call it a magic wand. Furthermore, it is a rare item that can amplify all magic spells and effects. To be honest, this replica is an insult to Harloy's identity as the Queen of Banshees. However, with the Pale Justice Soul Gem, it is completely different. Following the insertion of the Soul Gem, a pale holy light streaks across the entire blade. The pitch-black magic sword turns into a silver holy sword. Pale Justice, Fake, Attack Power, 15 to 20. Grade, Epic, Low Tier, Two-handed sword. Requirement, Strength 12+. Holy Knight Jobman-made holy sword. This sword is the incarnation of the familiar Harloys. An epic tier holy sword. As long as it doesn't come into contact with a semigod equipment, you can slash it however you like. However, due to accepting a soul gem that doesn't match its attributes, the blade is currently in a state of collapse. It will disintegrate in 29.99 seconds, 50 minutes. Elemental Control. Middle tier increases all elemental magic damage by 35%. The blade deals 15 points of designated elemental damage. Current attribute, Ice, High Holy Flame, inflicts 20 silver flame damage on chaos creatures, 5 silver flame damage on normal life forms. High tier Courage, immune to all fear-type spells and talents below the 9th circle. The user will always be in a state of high morale. Advanced Protection Against Evil. Damage dealt by chaos creatures to the user will be reduced by 10, Holy Flame, Courage, and Protection Against Evil. These were the attributes of a typical holy sword. It was also the effect of Holy Knight Kane's Holy Soul. It might not be very effective against ordinary people as the upper limit of the Roland Holy Sword's damage was just barely reaching the lower limit of the Roland Holy Sword. However, against chaos creatures such as demons and undead, it was at least comparable to a legendary tier god weapon. Of course, other than natural chaos creatures, just like the sinners judged by incantation of law, judgment, the users of the power of chaos found by the Holy Knight, detect evil, would also be viewed as a chaos creature by the Holy Sword. This includes elementalists who were wronged, demon warlocks who were slightly wronged, necromancers and evil mags who weren't wronged at all, witches and witches. Throughout history, the archmages and the churches of the gods have been in a state of conflict for a long period of time. The hunting of witches and witches has been going on for centuries. The Holy Knight, whose willpower is able to turn into magic resistance, naturally has high magic resistance. Furthermore, it has a special class advancement similar to the Mage Killer, so it is understandable that it doesn't have a good relationship with the mags. At this moment, I can't help but rejoice at the deep-seated hatred this sword has for chaos creatures. The moment we step into the hall of the Royal Astrology platform, the mags immediately focus their attacks on Diana and me, who are charging at the very front. Since we are going to challenge the Celestial Tower which is dominated by mags, naturally, the Holy Knight will act as a meat shield. For the mags, when they encounter a Holy Knight who has high magic resistance but short legs, the first step in their battle strategy is to maintain their distance before summoning cannon fodder to block the opponent. After that, they will use their flashy spells to blast them to death. As for the more conventional long-range control and kiting tactics, due to the high magic resistance of the Holy Knight, it is easy for it to be killed by the Holy Knight. Thus, it isn't popular anymore. Even though I am extremely familiar with this strategy, I charge forward without any hesitation despite the countless cannon fodder obstructing me. The reason? Naturally, the cannon fodder that mags summon are creatures from another world. Undead from the plane of death, elemental creatures from the elemental plane, low-tier demons and devils from the lower plane. Regardless of which one it is, they are all favored by chaos. Detect evil. Detect evil. 2 Holy Knight use detect evil at the same time. Under the AoE divine art, the mags are enveloped by a red light that represents chaos. Even the undead, demons and elemental creatures in front of us turn red. The 5 damage reduction from Titan Body and the 10 damage reduction from Advanced Protection from Evil, coupled with the outstanding physical defense from my heavy armor, makes me an outstanding tank when facing chaos creatures. Most of the time, the main task of the Holy Knight who has high magic resistance but low attack power is to act as a good meat shield in the party. Sundering Slash. After ignoring the attacks of the cannon fodder, The distance between me and the mags isn't too far. With a single strike, the mage who just summoned 2 skeleton archers is cut down without even making a sound. The first head of the mage falls into my hands. Seeing that their comrade had fallen, the other mags unhesitatingly threw their first wave of offensive spells at me. In an instant, fireballs and ice arrows flew everywhere, acid arrows and scorching rays formed a chain, and a torrent of arcane missiles rained down on me like a long river. However, that slender figure blocks in front of me. No matter how colorful and dangerous the spells are, she silently blocks them all. Is she dead? When the mist of ice and smoke from the flames dissipates, the brown-skinned elf knight is shockingly unscathed. She has already rushed to the stairs leading to the second floor. Along the way, a bunch of mags are lying on the ground. Fortunately, the Dark Elves' Holy Knight is from Sulphur Mountain. Otherwise, it would be too much of a bully for mags. Before they fell, the Dark Elves were once the upper nobility of the Great Elf Kingdom. The Light Elves are at least of the Bronze bloodline. Their physical attributes aren't much stronger than those of humans who are close to white. In terms of strength and stamina, which is an important indicator of a warrior, they are even slightly inferior. However, no one dares to say that they aren't worthy of being called a bronze race. The reason is because of their racial talents. Magic-resistant skin, this racial talent that all Dark Elves possess. In reality, it is terrifyingly strong. Based on the rank of the wielder, it will reduce the effects of magic and damage dealt. The effect of this reduction is extremely strong, and it even greatly reduces the effects of the spells of druil, witches, warlocks and others, including holy light. The only thing that it can't reduce is the divine arts of priests that carry divine power. This is also the reason why the number 1 person in the Dark Elf Society is a rose priest. Under most circumstances, only males with low social status would choose to become a mage. Even the barbarian of the elves, the chief of martial arts, has a higher social status than an archmage. A legend-ranked holy knight with ridiculously high magic resistance plus magic resistance skin plus magic resistance holy sword, Silver Avenger, which is most likely equipped with protection against evil. When the hall on the first floor is filled with low-rank acolytes who don't have any high circle spells, this is equivalent to using an egg to repel a train. I can already see the ending. Sundering evil slash. Simple and unadorned swordsmanship, 1 slash at a time, reaping the heads of the enemies with abnormal stability. I still have to be careful to avoid those magic spells and Druil who transforms into a bear or a werewolf. Diana has already charged back and forth a few times. Judging from her stunned expression, she is also surprised by the weakness of the enemy. At the start, when she saw so many mags, she was shocked. In the past, even when facing against those mags who are the bane of their existence, the endless trickery and tricks of their opponents caused all of the Dark Elves to suffer. To be able to kill 1 or even 2 or 3 with a single slash seems a little unreal. This is the surface. You can't expect every mage to be at the level of Lich Roland. In human society, a legend is at least a boss of a region. It is indeed embarrassing to use your full strength to bully a rookie. However, Diana, who grew up in the underground city, doesn't have the so-called dignity of the strong. Seeing so many mags, she was afraid that she would be instantly killed by the other party's powerful spell if she was too slow. Thus, she used her full strength and killed a dozen of them with a single slash. In the end, the large army that arrived a few seconds late could only clean up the mess. At this moment, those cannon fodder summoned creatures just happened to bump into the knight and gentleman. The knight was still fighting seriously when the gentleman started killing the entire field. Regardless of whether it is the 2 giant wolves controlled by Beifong or Kagio's bonebow, they are all Goldrank's explosive attacks. Under the sweep, Kolos wasn't even able to prepare her first AoE lightning strike before she was completely wiped out. Yet, they were considerate enough to leave behind a skeleton soldier that could fall apart at any moment. Looking at Renee, who was forced into a fluster by the mediocre skeleton soldier, I shake my head helplessly. Don't even talk about advancing, she is still too far away from becoming a qualified warrior. Even with the help of the system, experience and techniques aren't something that can be achieved in a single day. Following the ringing of the alarm, I know that I don't have the time to waste on lamenting. It is the same for the second floor. Diana and I will be the vanguard. Hurry up. Looking at the blueprint we just received, the Celestial Tower only has 3 floors. The first floor is used to store books, materials, daily necessities, and the hall to display the exhibits. The second floor is the living quarters of the staff, and the third floor is used to store all kinds of large-scale stargazing equipment. The opponents we are looking for, the upper echelons of the Celestial Tower, are most likely on the second floor. This time, the moment we reached the second floor, we met with trouble. The 2 gigantic steel golems that serve as decorations come to life immediately. The ornamental armor and sculptures in the surroundings come to life as armored warriors. On the other hand, the spiked traps and electric traps on the ground. After leaving the hall where ordinary people can enter, considering the fact that they have a bad reputation, the Celestial Tower has turned this place into their fortress. Actually, one of the steel golems was blocked by Diana. However, this steel golem is invulnerable and possesses immense strength. It isn't something that I can face head-on with my current strength. There's no other choice. Let's use our trump card. Sword of Order. This kind of human talent is still too much for the current me. Following the expenditure of a large amount of stamina and holy light, I feel the world spinning around me. However, with a swipe of my finger, a golden lightning bolt splits the wall apart and smashes into the body of the steel golem. That is the crystallization of pure holy light. It materializes into the shape of a sword and slashes down. Its might is condensed to the point that nothing can stand in its way. Following the explosion of light, a second wave of damage is dealt to the steel golem. Even the steel golem that can easily crush gold-ranked melee fighters staggers before collapsing. Catcher. A large hole is opened up on the back of the steel golem and black smoke continuously comes out from it. On the other side, Diana looks at me in shock. Even as a legend rank, she wasn't able to deal with the steel golem. Yet, I, who hasn't even reached silver rank, managed to take the lead. However, I shake my head. The steel golem is the favorite guardian of the Mage Tower and it is famous for its tenacity. This steel golem is obviously a high tier 1, so it won't be easy to deal with it. Even though it is heavily injured, judging from the gears that are still moving behind its steel skin and the spiritual light that is flashing, it is still far from being destroyed. However, how can I give it a chance to stand up again? I have already jumped onto its body. Picking up the other 2-handed sword, I stab it into the body of the steel golem and start stirring it around. Where did the sword come from? It was summoned by the Sword of Order talent. Race talent, Sword of Order. Summons a weapon made of the power of order to deal damage to the target, and the weapon will exist for 1 minute depending on the level of the summoner. The quality of the weapon is determined by the rank of the caster. Weapon of Holy Light, Arbiter of Holy Light attack power, 10 to 15. Quality, excellent 2-handed sword. Requirement, strength 12+. Holy Night job. Duration, 22 minutes. Holy Light crystal, increases the effects of Holy Light by 50%. Increases the recovery of Holy Light by 100%. The blade of the sword will deal 10 points of Holy Flame damage. Middle-level protection against evil, reduces the damage dealt to the user by 6 points from Chaos Lifeforms. This race talent that can only be used once a day can help me summon a Sword of Holy Light Sword of Order. The quality of the Sword of Order isn't bad. At the very least, the amplification of Holy Light is tempting. However, it is a pity that it can only last for 20 minutes, which isn't enough. As a large amount of holy light is injected into the steel golem, the invasion of a foreign energy clashes with its original energy system. After a series of cracking sounds, the steel golem is destroyed. Judging from the 200 fate points reward that jumps out, the strength of this steel golem is obviously above mine. The lack of explosive power has always been the weakness of a holy knight. On the other side, even though Diana has already battered the steel golem to the point that smoke is coming out from its body, she is still in a stalemate. Following the arrival of Kolos, after a series of lightning strikes, the steel golem, which has weak resistance to lightning, finally collapses. However, the trap that was activated next is a new problem. I finally know what we are lacking in this trip. We are obviously lacking a great thief. Do we really have to use our physical bodies to withstand this darned chain of traps? In the end, using the summoned creatures to scout the path, we were still able to pass through the trap zone. However, the time that we were delayed was a little too long. By the time we finished cleaning the second floor and reached the third floor, the leader of the Celestial Tower, the Ottoman Empire, Lamos I, had already disappeared into the dimensional door. The opponents on the second and third floor are slightly harder to deal with. However, we are already in the depths of the wilderness. Those who have dual identities in the Celestial Tower are all in their other identities. The strongest ones left behind are just 2 gold rank mags. They pose no pressure to our party at all. When I clean up the battlefield and count the losses of the opponents, I realize that the harvest is better than what I expected. Yet another unlucky fellow who failed to open the dimensional door and got stuck in the wall. This dimensional door that even rookie mags only have a 1% failure rate in, and I actually saw more than 10 high-rank mags successively fall into it. Looks like the matter of the Celestial Tower being cursed by the god of fate is true. At the same time, I, who should have been furious over the escape of the opponents, fell into an indescribable joy because of a piece of intelligence that I just picked up. For the sake of our noble aspirations and to expand our influence in the Ottoman Empire, we have decided to assist the old emperor's 5th son, Dasos, to ascend to the throne. In order to prevent him from burning the bridge after crossing the river, we have left behind evidence of him killing his father and brother. That is. What is surprising is that Dasos actually didn't kill his father. I don't think that he would be soft-hearted, so there must be some secret behind it. As expected, after helping Dasos to attack the envoy of the Swallow Federation, we unexpectedly found out about the ultimate secret of the Ottoman Empire. Perhaps, we can use this as a bargaining chip to extort more from him. Killing his father and brother. He really is an ambitious and ruthless person. This is the intelligence that I wanted. Dasos, perhaps, we can have a good talk. Perhaps, it is time for a good talk. The next morning, the news of the royal astrology platform being destroyed by fire spreads across the entire city. The spies of the royal family swiftly send the news to Dasos's desk. Hermit, who was woken up groggily from his sleep, immediately feels energized upon hearing such explosive news. Not intending to suppress them, from the moment the spies were discovered, they immediately tracked them down and within 2 hours, they managed to find the astrology platform. Looking at the corpses found in the ruins, there are at least 4 legends. Not only is he vicious, his subordinates are also skilled. Since the other party has displayed sufficient strength, then, at the very least, it is possible for us to have a talk. Furthermore, my men didn't manage to find the corpse of the mysterious Celestial Tower guild leader. Perhaps, he escaped. Then, this is a little troublesome. That fellow knows quite a lot of things. There is no need to be so foolish as to send himself to our doorstep for us to silence him. Let's just place him on the wanted list of the entire country and get rid of our relationship. Aren't you afraid that he would spill the beans? So what if he does? Will anyone believe him? Even if someone does, I am the only son left of the late king. Do you expect me to abdicate the throne? Right, has that old fellow confessed? Nope, that old fellow is as stubborn as ever. Why don't we give it a try again today? After a while, when the flower pot on the windowsill is moved away, the mechanism revealed is activated and a secret passageway to the underground room appears on the wall. Right. Why don't we organize a large-scale ball in your name and invite all of the foreign guests and descendants of the nobles? This way, it won't be too eye-catching. I think you are intending to make use of this opportunity to hunt for beauties. Alright, let's set it for next week. When Dasos raises the lampstand and walks down the pitch-black stairs, he didn't expect a pitch-black rat to follow him. Looks like it was the right decision to come here to look for food. If I were to sell this secret to the generous Roland, how much could I sell it for? Chapter 93. What do you think will happen if I were to use my war angel form to launch a surprise attack and slash that Dasos? Good idea, let's give it a try. This place isn't far from the river. After killing him, we can steal a boat and go down the river. Halfway there, we can jump off the boat and dive into the water. With our abilities, The success rate is at least 70%. UN, later on, I will throw the cup as a signal. You will transform into a blade and slash his neck. Then, we will snatch his magic sword and run. Can you let me eat that demon sword? I feel that it is very compatible with my attributes. Alright, but you probably can't digest it now. Wait for me to play with it for a while before you eat it. Your Highness Renee, I know that being forced to dress like this makes you unhappy, but please think of the people of the Donglan Principality. They are also considered as descendants of the Mist Country. Right now, they can't afford a new war. TSK, a certain princess was filled with resentment. HMPH, foolish humans. A certain meow alien said in disdain. Kelly looked at the human and cat who were really meticulously preparing a plan to kill the king, and could only smile bitterly. From a certain perspective, the reason why she followed along as a female official was because she was worried that the prince would be toyed with due to his resentment of being forced to dress as a female. The finance minister of the Ottoman Emperor held a cocktail party and invited Princess Renee to attend. Along with the letter, there was a note from the emperor. Your Highness, that day, perhaps it is time for us to have a talk. This concerns the future relationship between the two countries, so please come personally. A little girl who can't make the decision should forget about it. Under the that day, a red bar was drawn to represent the main point. Together with the little girl who can't make the decision should forget about it, the hint was obvious. Left with no other choice, Roland could only put on some makeup again. Her Highness Rain, who should have been angered by Roland's disdain, actually happily helped him put on makeup and choose his clothes. Roland was so angry that he ground his teeth. She's really beautiful. She's gentle, cheerful, mature, and reserved. She's bright but not seductive. I can't believe my face can reach this level. Your Highness Roland, don't put on such a sad face. You're actually quite beautiful. Even though you look exactly the same, with the temperament you've accumulated over the years, the immature Her Highness Renee is indeed quite different from you. Why don't you try becoming a real girl? There should be a lot of princes pursuing you. Ah, I'm sorry, there's already an emperor of a big country who wants you to be his empress. Why don't you think about it? Alright, from the way she was covering her mouth and giggling, Callie didn't have a conscience. Roland was already furious that he was forced to wear the light evening gown. With this provocation, Roland immediately grabbed his sword and was about to go out. Ignorant fool, you actually dare to insult me. Even though he was stopped by everyone, Roland still had a sour expression hanging on his face. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, Callie, who realized that she had gone overboard, volunteered to go along to supervise them. She definitely wasn't going to watch the show under the guise of doing something serious. Now, seeing that the man and the cat had actually started to plan an assassination, Callie started to regret her actions. If this person were to really make a move, then the Donglan Principality would be in deep trouble. Although he was trustworthy most of the time, there were times when his imagination ran wild and his temper flared up. It was hard to tell what he would do. However, it was no wonder that His Highness Roland was so furious. The black evening gown that reached the ground showed off his noble and elegant temperament. On his young face, there was a mature temperament. This contradictory yet harmonious temperament was exceptionally attractive to the opposite sex. The light makeup added a tinge of gentleness to his heroic face. Under Callie's skillful brush, the moment a beauty like a high mountain flower stepped down from the carriage, the surrounding people gasped and sighed. From Callie's point of view, His Highness Roland's eyebrows twitched a few times. She could even faintly see the veins on his forehead. It was apparent that he was on the verge of going berserk. I can't provoke him anymore. Otherwise, I'll really make a move on him. Thus, she hurriedly led the way and informed her family to lead the way. She brought Roland into the banquet hall to prevent him from going berserk on the spot. Pink skeletons, white bones, flesh. All laws are empty, everything is fabricated. Actually, I wasn't that angry. Isn't it just wearing more skin? In the past, I was only left with a skeleton for others to see, so what was there to be concerned about? I was already an adult, so how could I record such a small matter in my notebook and prepare to take revenge on them one by one in the future? However, If I didn't act a little angry, such things would definitely happen to me again in the future. That would be embarrassing. Thus, I naturally tried my best to appear angry. Of course, the gazes that the men looked at me with were really infuriating. That Dasos's astonished gaze also made me unhesitatingly mark him in my book of hatred. Brat, I will introduce Kolos and Victoria to you 2 days later. No, that isn't ruthless enough. That brat might even benefit from it. Thinking of a way to draw the spring of the drowned woman and introducing Beifeng to him is the way to go. Even though my mind is filled with malicious thoughts, I still squeeze out a smile on my face. After all, I am representing the image of the Donglan Principality. Behind my back, Kali is already on the verge of tears. Apparently, His Majesty the Emperor has already informed them, so there isn't anyone who doesn't know what's good for them to disturb us. Very quickly, in the room on the 2nd floor, the secret discussion between the two of them got to the main topic. You dare to touch the royal astrology platform? Aren't you afraid that I will use this case on your head and start a war? As expected, the negotiation started with a show of strength. You should be thanking us for helping you get rid of a huge problem. You even dared to use those lunatics from the Celestial Tower. Aren't you afraid of getting yourself into trouble? Right, we found some things from there that you might be interested in. For example, the case of the attack on the Swallow Federation. The Swallow Federation is one of the strongest countries in the world. The case of the envoy being attacked shocked the entire world. However, the true reason was because the Swallow people interfered in the fight for the throne of the Ottoman Empire. The man in front of me sent assassins to get rid of the envoy and even pinned the blame of the lack of security on the other party. It seems that he had already planned for my threat. Dasos shrugs his shoulders with a look of nonchalance. It is all in the past. If it was a year ago, I would still be a little worried. But now, hey, you should know how meaningful it is. However, let's forget about the matter regarding the astrology platform. Let's talk about the future. Alright, let's pretend that the matter regarding the vassal state never happened. We will return to our homes. That is impossible. The reputation of the Ottoman Empire will be swept to the ground. We would rather go to war. The advantage of having a private discussion is that we can get rid of the superfluous diplomatic rhetoric and get straight to the main topic. Just like what I said before, a negotiation is just two parties exchanging chips to test each other's bottom line before coming to a compromise. The final outcome is determined by the chips of both parties and the situation. It can be said that the outcome of a negotiation can be determined before the negotiation even starts. Originally, with the absolute advantage of strength, the Donglan Principality and I would be at a disadvantage in this negotiation. After all, as long as the other party threatens war, no matter how fearless we are, we would still have to give in due to our fear of war. Thinking of a certain Western lord, that is exactly what Dasos did. From the very start of the negotiation, he threatened war. It is obvious that he intends to suppress us. But what is fortunate is that I did find quite a few new chips in the astrology platform. As long as I take out something that is more powerful than war, I will naturally be able to turn the tables. The Kasums. After throwing out this word, I quietly savor the high-class pastries and black tea in front of me, not even looking at the other party. But from the corner of my eyes, I see two shocked and disbelieving faces. How did you know? Under the shock, Hermit can no longer maintain his sly smile. On the other hand, Dasos doesn't say a word. But from his action of caressing the magic sword at his waist, he is subconsciously considering the possibility of silencing me. Kasums is the name of a ship, but it isn't an ordinary ship. It is the flagship of the future Ottoman Empire's superweapon, the air fleet. Currently, it should still be under construction in a secret base under the river that has been hollowed out. Other than their regular military strength, every superpower empire has their own trump card. The Colossus army of the Swallow Federation can disregard city walls, the Bardi Empire is said to be able to summon a giant dragon to assist them, the cursed army of the Shiluor Empire is filled with all kinds of abnormal war monsters, the sea god guards of the Kasola Kingdom is said to be able to cause tsunamis on the continent, the Beastman Behemoth War Beast is said to be able to wrestle with a dragon. One of the reasons why the Ottoman Empire is unable to enter the superpower club is because of the lack of strategic weapons. Thus, the successive emperors have been investing in this aspect regardless of the returns. After messing up countless times, their final goal is the air fleet that can soar in the sky. As for the air fleet, from the technical theory to the construction of a base under the river, it has already taken the Ottoman Empire more than 200 years and more than half of the treasury of 4 to 5 generations of emperors. If the strategy guide didn't remember wrongly, they will only make their debut in the war with the underground world 15 years later. The moment they appeared, they destroyed more than 10 underground armies, shocking the entire world. But calculating the time, the construction should be nearing completion. In fact, the reason why the capital was moved to this Jiangcheng hundreds of years ago was so that it would be convenient for Kajisi City to build the underwater base. This kind of national treasure is definitely under the direct control of the emperor. But Dasos didn't inherit the throne through normal means. He wasn't even the crown prince in the past, so he didn't have the chance to know this secret. After he ascended to the throne, he was pleasantly surprised to find out that his country actually had this secret weapon. A difficult situation that no one could laugh at was placed in front of him. He had the treasury, but he couldn't enter. The key to the underwater base had been thrown away by the original crown prince, Milos. However, Milos had been killed by Dasos. Without the key, no one could enter or leave. Looking at the time, the people inside should have starved to death by now since no food had been sent in for a long time. This isn't a civilized society with human rights. All the people who know and their families are sent into the base, and food and supplies are all controlled by the outside world. Sometimes, the result of too much secrecy is that once a key problem occurs, everything will be cut off. Thus, he could only keep that stubborn old man alive, hoping that he would one day say that he has a spare key. Even if he were to use necromancy to extract his soul, he might still fail. As for colluding with the Celestial Tower and sending out the Royal Celestial Tower, it was also because he wanted to borrow the other party's divination magic to find the key. However, in this era, divination magic has already declined. Furthermore, this key was set up with a series of anti-detection spells. Furthermore, those fellows from the Celestial Tower are better at killing and causing destruction than their own profession, so it is natural that they didn't manage to find anything. Even if they couldn't use it, this fleet is still the top secret of the Ottoman Empire. If it wasn't for them participating in the rebellion, even Hermit wouldn't have the right to know about it. Now that an outsider like me has exposed it and even said the name of the fleet, it naturally roused his killing intent. In fact, in order to protect this secret, Dasos might even consider starting a war. Angels can fly. Putting aside whether the two legends in the secret room on the left can kill me in an instant, do you think that I would come and say it if I wasn't fully prepared? The black cat on my shoulder is the best hunting hound. From the very start, it noticed the other party's ambush. Noticing that it is impossible to silence them, Dasos's killing intent comes and goes quickly. However, this isn't the only thing I have. I know where the key is. That bunch of mad dogs found it, but they don't want to give it to you. If not for the fact that we still need the royal bloodline to open the lock, your treasury would have long been emptied by them. That bunch of mad dogs, bastards, wild dogs who didn't keep their promises, Hermit. Yes, Your Majesty. The latest arrest warrant will be sent down immediately. All the members of the Celestial Tower who are in our grasp will be arrested and all the traitors will be hanged. Even if I don't look in the mirror, I am probably smiling maliciously. To be able to frame one's enemy by chance, it really makes one feel delighted. The Celestial Tower didn't find the key, but someone found it. This is a famous and unique epic-ranked quest chain from 10 years in the future. It starts from a player who was lucky enough to pick up an old backpack from an ancient well. The final ending is the revival of the invincible fleet of the Ottoman Empire. The walkthrough for this isn't very clear, but the old well itself is a huge hint. This might be a huge secret to others. However, when Beifong told me that the new emperor is interrogating the old emperor for the key to the fleet, all that is left is to look for the walkthrough to find the location. After 3 nights of searching, I found the key in the 26th dried-up well. If we were to open the gate now, there might be a few engineers and archmages who could survive. That would be much better than all of us dying and starting from the beginning again. Compared to the invincible floating fleet, a remote vassal country doesn't seem to be that important. Right, if you intend to take a gamble and kill me to snatch the treasure, feel free to give it a try. Putting everything else aside, I am confident in making sure that the key is never found. For example, having a fish swallow it and throw it into the sea, or having a bird swallow it and fly everywhere. With a smile, I lightly stir the drink in front of me with a spoon, admiring the anxiety and uneasiness of my opponent. Considering the good reputation of the Mist bloodline for holding grudges, the willingness to destroy indiscriminately, and the fact that they hold grudges, Dasos is certain that if he were to use the threat of war, no matter what he obtains, at the very least, his ace fleet would be gone. I am not anxious at all. Since the chips are bigger than the other parties, the advantage is already on our side. The first to give in can only be the other party. Kelly and I smile as we sip our tea. On the other side, anxiety is written all over his face. His eyebrows are tightly knitted together. On one side, he is smiling while on the other, he is frowning. At this point, the situation is already clear. After a bizarre long silence, the King of Winter Wolf, who is clutching his forehead and sighing helplessly, finally gives in. I can allow you to slip away secretly. The final alliance ceremony and the list of vassal countries will have one less Donglan principality. However, your country must at least care about our reputation and remain silent in the international public opinion. Furthermore, it must still be our vassal country in name. Vassal country in name, this is the bottom line of the Ottoman Empire. Otherwise, he will be unable to explain himself to the other allied countries. I nod my head and don't say much. I have already expected this bottom line. It isn't worth it to clash head-on here. I already have a way to circumvent it. The main point now is to fish for other benefits. That's not enough. Our country is small and weak, so we need the support of your country. For example, your country's micellar mithril alloy, your country's special warhorses. Alright, what's left is the time for a certain person to demand an exorbitant price. He is already so angry that he wants to kill someone, but because his lifeline is in the hands of the other party, he can only bargain. Of course, as a national treasure, the micellar mithril alloy, it is impossible to get his hands on it. However, the bigger the demand, the easier it is to bargain. After 4 hours of arduous negotiation, Dasos and Hermit deeply understand that bargaining with a woman is equivalent to digging one's own grave. Forget about that Renee, that female elf official's patience is limitless. She grinds them down bit by bit, forcing them to flip the table before giving up. When the devil's contract is taken out by the angel and modified skillfully using the devil's language, even Dasos feels that his brain isn't enough to comprehend it. The signatory, Roland, guarantees in the name of the Mist bloodline that as the true holder of the Mist Kingdom's royal authority, after the contract is signed, the Mist Kingdom will become a vassal country of the Ottoman Empire in name. However, the Ottoman Empire must hand over the following resources to Roland. Is Roland your real name? Good name, just like that legendary hero of your royal family. Right, it seems to be the name of your Sword of the King as well. So it is a traditional name. A devil's contract requires one's real name to be signed in order to be effective. However, if I don't play a few word games, how can I live up to the infamous reputation of the devils who take pride in scamming contracts? The contract is signed with the Mist Kingdom and not the Donglan Principality. However, there are actually quite a number of people in the duchy who call themselves citizens of the Mist Kingdom. When the Mist Kingdom is destroyed, in the eyes of the monarchs of the various countries, the Donglan Principality is the revived Mist Kingdom. Of course, if they were professional diplomats, they might be able to see through this little trick. However, it is a secret contract and the two of them, whose patience has been worn down by the long negotiations, aren't professional enough. The result of this contract is that my destroyed Mist Kingdom will become a vassal of the Ottoman Empire in name. In return, he will give me a huge amount of resources and technology. If I don't abide by it, the devil's contract is signed with one's soul and the consequences are clear. By the time he realizes that he has been scammed, I believe that he won't have the time or energy to settle the score with me and the Donglan Principality. Just as we are satisfied with our harvest, The fatigued Dasos smiles bitterly. I'm a good spendthrift, right? Then, if I can be an outstanding spendthrift, can I treat you to dinner? He reaches out his hand like a gentleman to invite me, but what he gets in return is, ooh-ah. This little thing actually dares to bite me. I'm sorry, is this your cat? It's beautiful, but it seems that it's just like Master, a wild rose filled with poisonous thorns. I smile, but it isn't because of the monarch who changed his words in time. Have you collected enough blood samples? Who knows how much blood that key needs? Let's go back and try it. We have finished talking about everything that needs to be talked about. Do we really have to stay for dinner? Ignoring the regretful expression of Dasos, I stand up and leave. However, the moment I step out of the door, I am astonished by the chaotic scene in front of me. The banquet in front of me is a complete mess. The tables are overturned, the delicacies and wine are scattered all over the floor, the ladies are screaming and running away, the servants and gentlemen are surrounding the troublemakers. What is going on? Dasos seems to have found a place to vent his dissatisfaction and roars furiously. It's that human emperor DA. DA something. That is a gnome. Idiot, since you can't remember his name, just call him Your Majesty. Greetings, Your Majesty. In order to congratulate you for finally getting rid of your old man and ascending to the throne, we are here to give you a gift. This is another gnome. Idiot, don't touch my sore spot. What do you mean by getting rid of my old man and ascending to the throne? It is obviously a rebellion. Right, that Da Vinci. This is an orange-haired grey dwarf. Ingo, Kabbalah, Hoyle, they are here to give a gift to the new emperor in return. After going through an epic adventure, mainly due to them, they finally found their target. However, it is apparent that their target is about to go crazy. Guards, capture them. Chapter 94. Without a doubt, engineering is the occupation that burns the most money. As the investor of the Roland series of robots, as the honorary director of Sulphur Mountain Cities Engineer Association, the Bayard brothers of the Security Merchant Association are already on the verge of bankruptcy due to the endless expenditure of the series. Even so, the Roland series is still an immature product. The tall and mighty robots might seem powerful, but if they don't even have legend-rank fighting prowess, they are nothing more than high-level live targets in the underground world where experts are everywhere. If they were to add in high-level materials to raise their fighting prowess, the funds required would be astronomical. Thus, they thought of looking for investors in the surface where they need high-level fighting prowess. The Roland robots that they brought to the surface aren't the newest products of the Roland system. The technology used is second-hand goods that were discounted. However, in the surface world, it is filled with the smell of new technology. At the very least, in the eyes of the engineers, this is already an extremely valuable gift. Regardless of whether it is to gift a gift to the emperor of a huge country who is about to ascend to the throne or to the extravagant Ottoman Empire, as long as the gift is more valuable or novel enough, it is expected to receive an astonishing return. The Ottoman Empire's alchemy and engineering is also outstanding. If not, there wouldn't be an air fleet and magical machine dragons traveling in the future. At the very least, the goblins have long set their eyes on the secret alchemy of alloys and the magical machine theory, which is a mixture of magic and machinery. Their intention is to exchange for technology and resources. If that doesn't work, they can exchange it for some gold as research funds. This is a good idea. If an outstanding diplomat were to execute it, the outcome would most likely be satisfactory. But, it is a pity that the envoy led by Ingo, Bayard, Kabbalah and Hoyle, is destined to be a mistake. Kabbalah, an orphaned goblin born in Sulphur Mountain City. It is said that if we were to go by his genealogy, he is a goblin prince with a noble bloodline. It is said that he is a master in civil engineering, but he is obviously self-taught. I have never seen him build any decent houses before, but he has a unique passion for architecture. He often sneaks off to research on the foundations and beams of special buildings. It is one thing for him to research, but this fellow loves to do it himself, dismantling a few parts to research. Imagine what would happen if the pillars and foundations of a wooden house were removed. It wasn't the first time he had fallen into his own ruin. After creating countless pits and ruins, People gave him the nicknames Kabbalah the Little Prince of Digging Holes and Kabbalah the Green-Skinned Termite. He was also the target of the town security, and Kabbalah will come to your house tomorrow became a malicious curse. Fortunately, he had a good business sense and a rich family background. He had no concept of money for a long time, and he would always pay for it afterward without causing any personal damage. That was why he had been on the edge of prison all this time. There is no need to introduce Ingo, he is a mobile alchemist bomb specialist. Even though the dwarf Hoyle is a blacksmith master, he is also an all-rounder in prostitution, gambling, and alcohol. He is also a famous saboteur. To think that the group of dwarfs could come up with the idea of putting these three living treasures together as a diplomatic group to send gifts. The moment they arrived at their destination, the Ottoman Empire, the gambling addict Hoyle spent a few nights in various new casinos and lost a large portion of his travel expenses. On the other hand, Kabbalah dug up a monastery with 100 years of history and lost the rest of his travel expenses. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so poor as to steal ornaments from the trees by the roadside. They did go to the royal palace, but it is a pity that this group of fellows are incapable of negotiation. Overthinking things, they insisted on meeting the emperor before they were willing to hand over their gifts. In fact, they didn't even allow the rude guard to touch their treasures. Thus, this group of sneaky foreigners were almost mistaken as assassins with ill intentions. Their plan to send gifts was thwarted along the way. If such days were to drag on for a few more weeks, they might be forced to sell their gifts as scrap metal and scram home with their travel expenses. 2 days ago, when they found out that the hermit residence was going to host a ball and that the emperor was going to appear personally, they barged in with joy and delivered their gifts personally. However, as they didn't receive an invitation, they were obviously foreigners. Naturally, the guards wouldn't allow them to enter. In the end, the three dwarfs fought against the entire hermit residence's guards. Due to their outstanding experience in chaotic battles and individual strength, the three dwarfs had the upper hand. However, if they were to drag on for a while longer, the royal guards would come and deal with them as assassins. By then, it would be impossible to deal with them. Fortunately, Dasos came out in time. However, it was unfortunate that this group of lawless dwarfs offended the target they were trying to please the moment they opened their mouths. Forget about the insincere compliments. The moment they opened their mouths, they touched the sore spot of the other party who killed their father and brother. Are you here to send gifts or are you here to make enemies? Shaking my head, looking at the furious Dasos, I knew that if I didn't do anything about it, he would definitely go all out and execute the three of them to vent his anger. That wasn't something I wanted to see. Your Majesty, since they are here to send gifts, at the very least, let them present their gifts. At the very least, it would show off your magnanimity as the ruler of a large country. As though they didn't want to embarrass themselves in front of me, my persuasion with a smile seemed to have worked. Taking in 2 deep breaths, suppressing his emotions that were about to explode, Dasos nodded his head. Since Miss Renee has pleaded for you, I will give you a chance. Guests from a different tribe, state your identity and show your sincerity. After a discussion, the three dwarfs actually started to use the lines that they had prepared beforehand. Since you have asked with sincerity, then we will be merciful and tell you. Enough. Speak clearly in 10 seconds, otherwise, I will tie you to a stone anchor and throw you into the river. I was intending to listen to them changing the lines that I wrote recently, but apparently, Dasos didn't have the patience. The Emperor's angry roar made everyone in the room lower their heads and tremble. We come from the Sulphur Mountain city of the underground world. We heard that your Majesty is about to ascend to the throne, so we traveled 1,000 miles to deliver our most precious gift. As expected, threatening his life was effective. The underground world. In the eyes of the human nobles, the legendary underground world is filled with demons and massacres and wars are everywhere. It is completely different from the surface. Hearing that the goblin and grey dwarf came from the underground world, the faces of the nobles were filled with shock and disbelief. A flurry of discussion broke out. Then let me see what kind of precious gift it is. Without a doubt, judging from the slightly raised eyebrows and the smile on the corner of his mouth, the residents of the underground world came from thousands of miles away to congratulate him on his ascension to the throne. This made Darsos feel that he was very proud. I heaved a sigh of relief. The creativity of this congratulation from 1,000 miles away is not bad. As long as nothing goes wrong, even if the gift isn't anything special, Darsos would still pretend to be satisfied. Most probably, he would reward them handsomely and it would become a good story. Look, this is number 8820, one miniature robot. It is also our gift to your majesty. From Kabbalah's bag filled with patches, I took out a tattered robot. It is a worn-out robot that could fall apart at any moment. It is only a meter tall and its entire body is covered in green rust. Clearly, its parts were recycled and it doesn't have the prestige and fissomeness of the original. The flustered Ingo didn't explain his words clearly. What he meant was that the one he sent over was the large robot number 88. However, due to its huge size, he could only replace it with a scale model. Phut, this can be given to children to play with. This is an insult to the engineering standards of the Ottoman Empire. Our magic steam armor is already 3 meters tall. What is the meaning of sending this over? Does our emperor need a small toy? But obviously, in the eyes of the nobles here, it is just a few ignorant country bumpkins who sent a small toy to the emperor in an attempt to receive a generous reward. Look, he has a drill, a cannon, and a power backpack on his back. The technology is the most advanced in Sulphur Mountain City and it should be of help to your country's engineering research. I hold my forehead. The misunderstanding hasn't been resolved yet. The more seriously Ingo explains, the more he looks down on the other party's engineering and industrial standards, making me even angrier. ZZZ. Catcher. Boom. Alright, there's no need to explain anymore. Just like the other safety brand products, under the Goblin's adjustments, this scale model starts to leak electricity, then it starts to sizzle before exploding on its own. Enough. Is this the kind of gift you give to a king? Perhaps. You all think that I am foolish for my benevolence. The unsheathed magic sword shines with a blood-red radiance. The emperor no longer intends to conceal his killing intent. The three of them stare at one another in confusion. Even though the gift is so valuable and number 88 is the crystallization of the underground world's engineering, why does the other party seem to be so angry that he wants to kill them? Finally, Kabbalah comes up with a devious idea. Since you aren't satisfied with this gift, let's find another one at the last minute. Lord, this is our gift. A gem with boundless charm. Audacious. How dare you? Looking at the gift that Kabbalah takes out from the sack, the Ottoman nobles fly into a rage. Those are some familiar gems, and they are even the decorations along the river. To think that these cheap gems of inferior quality that no one would pick up would be gifted to the highest emperor? Damn it, this is even more despicable than stealing a fresh flower from a girl's most beloved garden and using it to make a bouquet to propose to the original owner. I am speechless at how they are courting death. Heh, bickering with you all is a waste of my time. Fortunately, Darsos laughs out of anger. In the end, he shakes his head, as though he doesn't want to bicker with these goblins anymore. Bring them away. Forget it, you all can leave by yourselves. Sulphur Mountain City? Isn't that the birthplace of the gods that we have never heard of? Since the citizens there are like that, it seems that even the true gods will have country bumpkins in the future. Say, do you think that the great gods will escape to the mortal world to seek refuge? Perhaps, our Ottoman Empire will be blessed by the gods because of this. Obviously, the emperor's sense of humor sucks. This cold joke that criticizes the true gods makes it even harder for one to laugh. But, I have never heard of that god of law. I have heard of it a while ago. Nowadays, quite a number of merchants have chosen to believe in that religion. As expected, it is a church for the lower class. It can be seen from these fellows. Who knows how that unknown fellow became a true god? Perhaps, he stepped on dog poop when he went out and somehow ascended to become a god. However, Darsos is the emperor. Thus, even if it is a joke that isn't funny, the nobles under him have to try their best to laugh and follow along. However, they aren't dumb. At the very least, they know that they can't call Wu Mianxi's real name directly. Otherwise, it would attract the attention of the true god and the god's punishment would be sent down. Enough, you all can insult us, but you must never slander Lord Wu Mianxi. You foolish humans. You all can't even compare to his little finger. The ear-piercing screech of the goblin echoes in the hall. Following which, the entire hall bursts into laughter even louder. You are not allowed to laugh. You are not allowed to laugh. I, Ingo, Bayar, forbid you all to laugh. However, the more he screams and the more furious he gets, the louder the laughter of the human nobles gets. You are not allowed to laugh. Otherwise, I, the almighty country bumpkin god, will punish you all. Seemingly confident in his sense of humor, Desos pinches his throat and imitates it perfectly, causing the laughter to grow louder and louder. It even lifts the ceiling of the hall and spreads to the outside. You. What do you all know, you bunch of short-lived fools? Only when you all turn into ashes will the gaze of the true God turn to you. In front of the gods, you must know how to be humble. How incredible are you, the ruler of the mortals. In the eyes of the gods, you are nothing. All right, the goblin's furious questioning is indeed the truth. However, it has struck the sensitive pride of some people. Which, at least we are able to live a rich and beautiful life. As for that Sulphur Mountain city, if it was really rich, it wouldn't have required you all to use stolen jewels as gift. Such a place is actually the sacred land of the god of law. As expected, only a second-rate place can produce such a country bumpkin god. The moment Desos's angry words come out, the entire hall quiets down. Even he hurriedly covers his mouth. Although he didn't mention his real name and the true gods aren't able to sense it, if this slander were to spread, he and the Ottoman Empire would become the mortal enemies of the Church of the God of Law. Suddenly, the old dwarf, who had been sleepy all this time, smiled. To think that the ruler of the mortal world would dare to slander the gods of the heavens. Initially, based on your courage, I would have toasted you and made a bet with you. However, it is a pity that you found the wrong opponent. Ingo, that brat, has always been full of nonsense, but this time, he isn't wrong. Compared to Lord Wumianzi, even if you are compared to the Lord Wumianzi who is still in the mortal world, you aren't worth as much as his toenails. I have heard of the deeds of that person. Isn't he just a country bumpkin judge who suddenly received the recognition of the Order gods and ascended to become a god? It isn't wrong to say that he was lucky enough to step on Dog-T. The battle between the authority of royalty and the authority of the gods is endless. Obviously, Desos has no respect for the god of law. Since he is destined to offend him, what's wrong with offending him a little more? The scene in front of me makes me surprised. If the town security or the judges of the Supreme Court are here to protect my dignity, I wouldn't be surprised at all. However, the bunch of bastards in front of me are perverted gentlemen who have been beaten up by the town security time and time again. Even with my identity as Wumianzi, I have dealt with them several times. It is one thing for them to not bear a grudge against me, but to think that they would actually speak up for me. Perhaps I should go and have my hearing and sight checked. Perhaps people like you are unable to understand, but the underground world is a true hell. It is completely natural for the weak to die. In a world that is lacking in resources, one can even take someone's life for a cup of water. I am an orphan with nothing. For an unlucky fellow like me, dying in a ditch is the most likely outcome. However, only Sulphur Mountain City would allow a weakling like me to survive. It even gave me a chance to learn architecture and rely on my own two hands to survive. Different from you people who are so rich that you can use jewelry to decorate trees, us unlucky fellows who struggle for our lives know how difficult it is to allow the weak to live on with dignity, to allow the strong to not rely on the flesh and blood of the weak to survive. In this world, the only one who can do it is that Lord. Kabbalah, who has been silent all this while, says, I dream that one day, my descendants will live in a country that doesn't judge them by their race, but by their character. These words are carved on the city gates and plaza of Sulphur Mountain City. That year, everyone thought that it was the ramblings of a lunatic. However, that man spent more than 100 years, bit by bit, to eliminate the prejudice against his race and really achieved this dream. Can you imagine? The kind and benevolent Dark Elf Knight, the peaceful and lazy undead warrior, the hardworking and friendly goblin lad. In Sulphur Mountain City, race isn't important. What is important is what you have done and what you intend to do. The old dwarf shakes his wine gourd and drinks half of it in a single gulp. O monarch of the mortal world, perhaps you can order your army to fight for you, and let your farmers work for you, but can you not order the ordinary citizens to walk up the city walls of their own volition, to protect the city with everything they have, to throw themselves into a war that is absolutely impossible to win? That man did it. He made the city into a home that all of its citizens are willing to sacrifice everything to protect. For some reason, the battle against the demon count floats in my mind. Those adorable citizens who took the initiative to walk up the city walls make me smile every time I think about it. He is just a political expert. As long as I have enough time, I can do it too. Daesos's face steels, but he still refuses to admit defeat. But at the same time, the ear-piercing shriek of the goblin reverberates in the hall once more. Emperor of the mortal world, you can see that we fellows aren't good people. A while ago, we were imprisoned in Sulphur Mountain City's jail due to certain matters. Due to the schemes of certain people, the walls of the jail were pushed down, but we didn't make use of the opportunity to escape. Do you know why? That's because you are cowards. Old Beard and I are both gold rank. Going by the words of you humans, we are transcendental masters. But the ones guarding us are at most a few silver rank. At our level, we can earn a living wherever we go. Why do we have to obediently stay in that city and be bullied by the juniors? The old drunkard laughs. That time, all those who escaped from the jail died. After the incident, it proved that the choice of those who didn't escape was indeed the right one. Those who do evil must be punished. Those who are guilty will eventually be judged, and only judgment can redeem the sinner. This sentence is hung in front of the stone tablet in the prison, but I'm afraid that people like you won't believe it. However, I can tell you that under that man's rule, this naive sentence has become the axiom of that city. The reason why we chose to stay in the jail is because we believe in that man's words. As long as we complete our punishment, as long as we don't touch the bottom line of evil, we can live openly in that city. As long as we commit a crime, we will be punished. As long as we are innocent, we can live openly. A grey dwarf like me isn't welcomed in any of the underground cities, and their gazes towards us are filled with suspicion. But in our city, no one will be prejudiced because of race. Emperor of the mortals, may I ask if you can do it? No matter how I put it, as a king, can you give your subjects a happy home where most of them are willing to give up everything for it? If you can't do it, then you can't even be compared to that person's pinky. Old drunkard, how can we do it? Don't you remember what happened to us along the way? If not for us having some tricks up our sleeves, we would have long been eradicated of evil and confiscated all our belongings along the way. Ayo, that's true. Brother Bayar, I'm starting to miss home. Perhaps it's time for us to return. What the greatest king in 300 years, rumors really can't be trusted. He doesn't have the breadth of mind to accommodate others, doesn't have the wisdom to understand others, and is filled with jealousy and prejudice. I think this country will fall in his hands sooner or later. Emperor of the mortals, I know that you pray for immortality because you short-lived emperors are all like that. But I'm afraid that even if you really become immortal, you will just be a zombie that yearns for the mortal world. You will never be able to compare to that man who sacrificed everything to transform the world with the incarnation of law. Such a despicable human actually dares to mock the gods in heaven, mock the incarnation of justice. Should I say that the ignorant are fearless? Or should I say that the shameless are invincible? After which, the three of them carry the gunny sack and intend to leave. But this time, they aren't able to leave. Under a certain person's signal, the two legends who are lying in ambush in the secret room are already blocking their way. Insulting the emperor in front of him is a crime of disrespect. Lock him up in the dungeon. Let's see if that incarnation of justice of yours will come to save you. Looking at Daesos's steely face, I know that it's useless to say anything at this moment. Sigh. I have to check up on the information again. Where is the royal dungeon? You are really finding trouble for me. Even though I say so, for some reason, my mood becomes much better. Chapter 95. A wise man becomes a fool, a fish that is most easily hooked. Because he relies on his vast knowledge, he is unable to see his own arrogance. The foolishness of a fool is nothing special, but the foolishness of a wise man is laughable. Because he uses all his skills to prove his own foolishness. In a foolish country, there is a wise king. He thinks that he is nobler and greater than the gods. Oh, my brother, please don't say that. That dignified king, he is waving his unparalleled scepter, intending to ascend to the unparalleled throne. If you criticize him, be careful that he raises his maggot-covered scepter and beat you up. Chumph, insignificant king, are you not even allowed to speak the truth? That arrogant declaration, that arrogant words that treat the god of law as a country bumpkin, provokes the laughter of the gods in the sky. Oh, who gave that comical king the confidence to think that he, with his short lifespan, and his country, can look down on the person who has already entered the realm of immortality? Perhaps it is because his voice is very loud. At least, his heart-wrenching roar scared the crows into trembling. Perhaps it is because he is very rich. At least, he is rich enough to use jewels to decorate the trees and carpets to pave the roads. Perhaps it is because he is very strong. At least, those 46 unlucky fellows are intending to offer their flags and obediently become his lackeys. The three comical people, surrounded by the legends, continued to sing their songs. Ha 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 ha. He he. The hall was already in chaos. Amidst the trembling nobles, crows, the laughter of the three dwarfs became one. The emperor's voice is very loud. Perhaps his angry roar could be heard throughout the entire country, but that person has never needed to roar. Even when facing a farmer who has nothing at all, even when facing the questioning of a noble semigod, he would only take out his own codex and Mance would explain to the other party the principles of our Sulphur Mountain city. Let us wait. Let the great time judge the weight of words. 300 years later, how many ashes will remain of that great monarch? Will his arrogant words have already become the laughingstock of history? And will that silent, undying one have already realized his own ideals and used his own rules to change the entire world? The emperor's kingdom is very rich. Oh, in order to keep up appearances, he extravagantly opened his own treasury, used jewels to decorate the trees, and used milk to irrigate the rivers. Our village judge was not so rich. He was so poor that he often overdrew his salary and had to write IOUs to the shops to prepare for tomorrow's bread. But in his country, as long as you work hard, you won't starve to death. As long as you obey the law, you can gain dignity. Every civilian could enter his office. They could complain about their troubles and express their hopes for the future. But in your country, it's a dog-eat-dog world. The greedy nobles are jackals and wolves. The cunning merchants are sheep in front of the jackals and wolves, but they are man-eating tigers and leopards in front of the commoners. And you, great king, the supreme being who feeds on wolves, tigers, and leopards, have you ever been to the civilian area in the suburbs to listen to the lambs that are in so much pain that they can't live anymore, to listen to how they sell their children and abandon their children just to fill their stomachs today? The emperor's kingdom is very powerful. Oh, I heard that your royal guards are the elites of the Silver Cross, symbol of the silver rank, and that your voice can make the neighboring countries tremble. Then do you know that in the underground world where the weak are prey to the strong, even the Golden Triangle, symbol of the gold rank, are just cannon fodder under the flames of war? Do you know that we have just annihilated the demon count and his army that are comparable to a true god? We have also exiled the dragon queen that leads countless evil dragons. The beast king that has over 10,000 Golden Triangle guards has also been beheaded. We don't have the so-called noble nobles that protect our territory and subjects because our territory doesn't belong to anyone. Our city doesn't have an army, and as long as the shadow of war approaches our final home, every one of us is a brave warrior who is willing to risk everything. We have many enemies, but we have even more trustworthy friends. And you, great king, the emperor who is jealous of the gods, do you think that when you lose your crown and scepter, when your home is threatened with destruction, how many people are willing to sacrifice their lives for you? How many nobles will perish along with the country? How many allies will come to save you and not stab you in the back? The young emperor who raises the scepter of corruption, you think that you are a dignified king, but in reality, you are just a clown who is trying to please the crowd. The unjust who murdered your father and brothers, you think that you can look down on that person, but regardless of character or the meaning of your existence, You can't even compare to that person's little finger. The foolish king who is jealous of the true gods. You think that you are rich because you are strong, but in reality, you don't even know what true strength is. In front of that lord, in front of true strength, please remain humble. You are because you are cool. In reality, you are ugly. You are a joke. Alright, in the midst of their banter, Daesos's face has turned the color of pig liver. In the end, the three dwarfs were all captured by the emperor's personal guards. Perhaps, it should be said that they realized that they were no match for the emperor, so they unhesitatingly raised their hands to surrender. But someone perceptively sensed that this matter was far from over. Hoyle and the others didn't care about the country's situation, and they were bastards who were full of problems. But they knew who gave the citizens of Sulphur Mountain City a good life. So, even if you were a supreme ruler, as long as you insulted the benefactor in their hearts, they would still dare to scold you harshly. The human king who mocked the true gods, the dwarf gnomes and grey dwarfs who mocked the king, in the eyes of the bystanders, especially in my eyes, this was a scene destined to be recorded in the annals of history. As expected, 2 days later, the situation had changed. The nonsense of the three dwarfs has been turned into a comical bar tune. Now, many of the middle and lower class taverns and tea houses are singing it. It has already spread, and I'm afraid that it will be impossible to stop it. The general trend of history was indeed unstoppable, but the so-called general trend was formed by countless people and events. In the open and covert struggles of the country, the three of them were insignificant figures who weren't worth mentioning. But, more often than not, it was these insignificant figures who did shocking things. There's definitely a mastermind behind this. Most of the lyrics are taken from the original words of those gnomes, and they've been edited and edited. The artistic level is extremely high. Our music masters and dramatists all say that this is probably the work of a master. They even say that perhaps this will become a masterpiece. Bishop Collos of the God of Law has already sent an official note, requesting us to release the hostages as soon as possible and explain our disrespect towards the God of Law. The Church of Holy Lights Noel VI has expressed his dissatisfaction with us through an emergency channel and requested us to explain our disrespect towards the God of Law. What followed was a serious warning and concern from the churches of the 9 true gods. They are demanding an explanation from us. The royal guards have seized the giant robot at the temporary residence of the 3 fellows. That should be the gift that they intend to send out. According to the preliminary research conducted by the Royal Engineers Association, it is indeed very advanced. Many of its technologies are very helpful to our country's engineering research. But, it is a pity that the gnome isn't willing to cooperate at all. I don't know who spread the news, but there are already people privately accusing the Empire of biting the hand that fed them and mocking the Emperor for not being magnanimous. The intelligence organization Midnight Rose has sent out a warning. Those groundless rumors vividly described how you murdered the previous emperor in order to ascend the throne. Of course, this is all slander, but your prestige has indeed been affected because of this. Following the spread of that malicious and sarcastic rumor, there are already people calling the emperor the foolish king who envies the true gods. There are also people spreading rumors that the Ottoman Empire has the ambition to annex other countries. At least 30 of the 46 countries are ready to make a move. They are communicating in private, and it seems like they are plotting something. Bad news was placed on the table one after another. The pen was better than the sword. The young emperor was facing the most dangerous challenge since he ascended the throne. The invisible enemy in the shadows was the alliance of countless hostile forces, making it impossible for him to fight back even if he wanted to. It had to be said that, in a sense, Daesos was indeed a virtuous king. At least under his rule, his subordinates dared to directly complain about the mistakes of the emperor and the various unfavorable situations without fear of being punished. Daesos, you really went a little overboard this time. Everything else doesn't matter, but just because of a verbal dispute, you put the hat of despising the true gods on your head. You have incurred the hostility of the churches of the gods. You are really too stupid. As Daesos's close friend and brother, only Hermit dared to speak ill of the emperor to his face. But at this moment, Daesos's face was full of regret. Thinking back, it was indeed not his usual cautious way of doing things. As expected, Staying away from women is the right thing to do. Beauty is harmful. Now that Desos thought back, the reason why he was so angry to the point of not choosing his words was more or less because Renee was by his side. Being criticized and ridiculed in front of the woman he admired and losing face, even the most cautious and humble person in the past could easily lose control of his anger and fly into a rage, not to mention the emperor of a country who had just grasped great power. There must be a reason for that contract. After all, it's written in the language of the demons. There's more or less a problem with the language of the lower realm. Language itself was magical. The language of the lower realm would incite negative emotions. The language of blasphemy in truth magic and the language of chaos in divine arts were language magic that used the language of the demons and demons in the lower realm. In contrast, there were alternative divine arts and magic that used the language of the gods and angels in the upper realm, such as the word of virtue and the language of holiness. Desos had stared at that contract for far too long. Unknowingly, negative emotions had already been incited in him. The magic sword itself would cause people to be inclined towards chaos. When he walked out of the room, his emotions were already extremely depressed and uncomfortable. It was only natural that he would lose control after being ridiculed in front of his face. It's too late to say all this. Things have already happened. Now, I should think about how to make up for it. If it was just a slip of the tongue, it would be easy to deal with. But the weight of the heavy gift from the mocker had instead caused Desos to be labeled as ungrateful and narrow-minded. As that strange song spread throughout the entire city, it spread at lightning speed. Before he gained the reputation of being the king of winter wolves, the good name of the foolish king who envies the gods was first given to Desos. And for a feudal ruler, authority and dignity were more important than life itself. Reputation was sometimes equal to power itself. When an emperor lost his dignity and reputation, the major nobles under him would naturally no longer listen to his orders. All of this wasn't a certain person's scheme. But sometimes, the accumulation of accidental factors would be far more fatal than the enemy's schemes. In particular, Desos and the Ottoman Empire weren't completely united. Although his father and older brother had fallen from power, the power they had left behind hadn't been completely uprooted. The major warlords and major nobles of the various territories were even more ambitious. How could they possibly let go of this opportunity to lower the king's authority and dignity without having to take the initiative? And those small countries that were forced to join the alliance had long been filled with resentment. It would have been fine if the Ottoman Empire had no flaws, but now that it had revealed a flaw, they would naturally attack together and look for an opportunity to break free from the suzerain and become independent. If it had been 3 to 5 years later, when Desos had stabilized his position, all of this wouldn't be a problem. But recently, Desos had been forcefully pressuring the alliance internally and externally, and he was already sitting on the edge of a volcano. Now that he had made a slip of the tongue and revealed a flaw, how could his opponents let it go? Thus, under the concerted efforts of all parties, the pub tunes and rumors spread rapidly, and all sorts of hidden dangers were detonated at the same time. Since we've already made a mistake, then let's go all the way. Lock those 3 into the highest level prison and don't let them see anyone. If they're released, it would instead make us look weak. Reply to Noel VI and be more tactful. Just mention that I've made a slip of the tongue and apologize. As for the Church of the God of Law, we've already thoroughly offended them, so just ignore them. As for the rumors, get the intelligence organization to create more inconceivable rumors to confuse the public. Even in the face of a disadvantageous situation, Desos's expression didn't change as he proposed a series of countermeasures. Although it was a strategy to mend the pen after the sheep had been lost, it was still appropriate. This, Your Majesty, Lord Hermit, I've just received 2 pieces of news. The civil official who suddenly ran in hesitated. It was obvious that it wasn't good news. Say it, what other bad news do you have? I'll take it. I don't know who spread that pub tune into the royal prison, but those goblins have been humming it all day long. Furthermore, those prisoners have also started singing along. They're all mocking me. There are even people who say that because of the incompetence of this generation's ruler, the Ottoman Empire is about to enter a decline. ***. Even though he knew that these were all superficial mockery from the losers, Desos still couldn't control his uncontrollable emotions. He hammered down with great force, and the expensive red Nanmu desk instantly split into two. The room instantly became silent. After a while, the low voice of the emperor that was suppressing his anger exploded in the room like thunder. "I got it. What's next? What other bad news is there?" The young civil official replied with a trembling voice. "The Donglan Principality has announced that the God of Law will be established as the national religion. That Princess Renee used her own reputation to guarantee the innocence of those three people. She also guaranteed that the gifts they sent out are priceless treasures and that they weren't disrespectful. She requested for us to release them immediately. Boom. Catcher. This time, the expensive desk didn't need to be repaired anymore. After Desos smacked it furiously, not only did the desk crumble, even the floor was smashed open. As expected, women aren't worthy of trust. At the same time, in the river, a figure was diving. Beside him was a black cat that was walking underwater. "Is it here? Is the key reacting? Hurry up, we don't have much time left." Chapter 96. In a certain world, if a lawyer specialized in civil disputes, the first thing a lawyer had to learn was how to create traps in the contract and how to avoid the other party's scams, so as to earn more benefits for their employer. The devils of this world were experts in scamming contracts. However, if they were to lie from start to finish, their reputation would be ruined sooner or later, and no one would be foolish enough to sign a contract with you. Thus, with the souls of both parties as a guarantee, as long as one could see through all the traps, the devil's contract was the fairest and most effective contract in the world. It was very popular in the various planes. The lower plane's language written on the contract had magic power. Even residents of the main plane who didn't know the devil's language of the lower plane would be able to understand it at a glance. However, if one were to think that the contract was fair just because they could understand it, they would be making a huge mistake. Tens of thousands of years ago, the devils had already studied it as an art. For example, if you were to use a magnifying glass to look at the gorgeous patterns on the contract, you would realize that it was actually a supplementary clause formed by a circle of distorted small words. If you didn't notice it before signing, you could only blame yourself for being unlucky. That long and complicated chapter that people didn't want to read, perhaps the acrostic poem at the beginning of every sentence, was the true crux of the contract. You thought that the contract was meant to be read horizontally, but when it was time to carry out the contract, the devils would tell you that you should read it vertically or diagonally. Then, the meaning would be completely different. As for the inverted subject-verb-object, typos, missing words, extra exemptions, and other incongruous areas, please don't treat them as accidental mistakes and clerical errors. Those were mostly done intentionally by the scammers. There was definitely a problem within. Thus, for archmages who had been dealing with the lower plane for a long time, the first priority when making a deal with the devils was not to use the original contract provided by the devils. Instead, they insisted on drafting the contract on the spot, even if it was destined to be a marathon battle. Along with the development of time, the hypocritical and cunning human nobles gradually began to use the devil's contract as a guarantee for their souls. Of course, the talent of humans in deceit is definitely not inferior to the devil's. Over the millennia, contract scams have also come up with countless new tricks that even the devil lords would be shocked by. For example, intentionally raising an orphan, giving him the exact same name as a VIP to sign on behalf of him. Even if it was me, I wouldn't dare to use the original contract provided by others, nor would I dare to let the contract leave my sight. As expected, at the negotiation table, Desos didn't hesitate to reject the contract I had proposed. He even invited scholars and law experts from Hermit's residence and requested for a new contract to be drafted on the spot. And so, we fought against each other on the spot. But very quickly, the initiative to construct the contract slowly returned to my hands. After all, the expertise of those scholars and law experts couldn't be compared to mine. Putting aside the fact that the devil's language in the lower plane possessed magic. Stirring up negative emotions was the weakest side effect. What was most fatal was the corruption of the devil's language. At the very end, apart from knowledge, It was also a battle of physique and willpower. Furthermore, I intentionally dragged out the time to argue over the terms of the contract. I also intentionally dictated the devil's language to increase the pressure on the other party. When the contract was finally signed, the 3 scholars, who had relaxed their mental state, immediately fainted on the spot. Looks like they wouldn't be able to recover without a year or so of recuperation. In the end, I was very satisfied with the final contract. The efforts of the experts were also seen by the other party. Dasos and the others were also very satisfied. At the very least, they should be very satisfied before those loopholes are discovered. Out of all of them, the one that I am most satisfied with is the condition of the 2 countries are not to launch any military threats or acts of war for the next 10 years. Without a doubt, this reassures the Mist country. If not for this condition, a few days after we exchange our bargaining chips, the weaker side would have to submit to Darsos's threat and the contract would have been for naught. 10 years later, I didn't think that he would have the leisure to cause trouble for the Donglan Principality by then. Besides, as long as the plan went smoothly, who knows who would be the one causing trouble for whom. At the moment, with this secret contract, the Donglan Principality had truly obtained its freedom. That was also the reason why Renee and the others unhesitatingly chose to recognize the God of Law as the national religion after going back to the Mist country to negotiate and request the Ottoman Empire to hand over the 3 dwarfs. Without a doubt, this was equivalent to raising the flag of challenge to the authority of Dasos and the Ottoman Empire. Furthermore, it was a vicious stab in the back right after the contract was signed. Furthermore, under the contract that was just signed, the Ottoman Empire wasn't able to do anything about it. I just kicked you in the back. What, are you going to bite me? Even with such provocation, the Donglan Principality is still fine. Looks like the rumor that the Ottoman Empire is strong on the outside but weak on the inside is true. Perhaps, that young emperor isn't even able to mobilize the dukes and marquises under him. Under the watchful eyes of so many enemies, the first person who jumped out to challenge the authority of the Ottoman Empire and wasn't slapped to death with a single slap would probably follow suit without any hesitation. By then, the authority of the Ottoman Empire would be in danger. This wasn't my conjecture. The changes in the situation over the past few days had proven everything. I was indeed the one who spread the lyrics, but I wasn't the one who composed the music. After all, I knew my own limitations. Even though my musical talent was stronger than Gria's, it had only evolved from the howl of a banshee to the howl of a Lich. The effects of killing people were the same. Perhaps, dying slowly would be a form of torture. Since composing the music wasn't something that I was capable of, there were now several variations of the music, such as a bar tune, an opera, and so on. The evolution of the music was far too quick. Without a doubt, there were people who took this opportunity to take action in the dark, intending to deal a heavy blow to Dasos's reputation. Dasos had the prestige of ascending to the throne and suppressing the 46 countries. How impressive was that? But this was doubtlessly a huge gamble. If he succeeded, the rewards would be tremendous, but it would also bring about a huge backlash. This backlash included both internal and external. Judging from how quickly the music was composed and spread, as well as the high quality of the finished product, there was an 80% chance that it was the work of the major nobles of the Ottoman Empire. It would be difficult for other factions to find so many local musicians and dramatists to adapt the music. Then, they would use a large number of traveling poets to spread the bad name of the foolish king jealous of the true gods. In a feudal country, a powerful ruler was doubtlessly something that the major nobles didn't want to see. The Ottoman Empire had 2 Grand Dukes, 4 Dukes, and 37 Marquises. More than 70% of them had their own territories and people, and they were the local emperors who ruled over their territories for a long time. And in the future history, the powerful Dasos would find an excuse to take back 1/3 of the nobles' titles and confiscate their territories and wealth, creating a powerful centralized country. This was also a historical necessity. When royal authority rose, the local nobles would definitely be suppressed. From a certain standpoint, the major nobles of the Ottoman Empire didn't do anything wrong. They had long since seen the ambition of the new king and had been looking for a chance to break out of this situation. On the other hand, 2 hours after the Donglan Principality made the request to protect the 3 people, 13 countries made the same request. Among them, 3 countries had even been vassals of the Ottoman Empire for over 100 years. Now, the 3 people didn't matter anymore. The envoys of the various countries didn't even know the names of the 3 people. However, this didn't stop them from protesting. These innocent unlucky people had become the breakthrough point for the smaller countries to challenge the authority of the Ottoman Empire. As the envoys of the various countries received the authorization from the royal families of their countries, the number of people participating in the challenge would probably increase. This was undoubtedly the retribution of the Ottoman Empire for suppressing the smaller countries. No one was willing to become the subordinate of another country. Not only did they have to pay tribute, but they also had to serve as cannon fodder during the war. Since the situation couldn't get any worse, they might as well take the chance while the new king was on the throne. There was no doubt that during this period of time, Desos's royal authority and dignity were being challenged from both inside and outside. However, the way he dealt with it was very memorable. Facing the provocation, he strangely remained silent. He didn't seem to have any intention of criticizing the Donglan Principality. Instead, he silently fulfilled the requirements of the contract and handed over large amounts of resources and technology to the envoys. His admitting defeat just like that. Renee, Kelly, and the others were astonished. This was completely unlike the domineering emperor's style. However, in my eyes, Desos hadn't changed at all. He was still a typical gambler. Currently, he was remaining silent. He was only throwing more chips into the gamble, intending to make the gamble even bigger. If he had intended to compromise, he could have simply released the 3 people. However, he maintained a strange silence towards the 3 people. He only silently endured the pressure and waited for a chance to make a comeback. Fulfilling the contract was only a part of it. According to our contract, if the Ottoman Empire fulfilled the conditions of the contract and paid us the resources and technology, then it would be my turn to hand the key to the underwater base to Desos. A chance to make a comeback, the enthronement ceremony? When the time comes, as long as we bring out the floating airships, no, we don't even need the entire airships, just a single airship, this unprecedented weapon of the era, would be enough to greatly boost our reputation and suppress all opposing voices. I could already guess how he would change the program for the enthronement ceremony. Military parades were always a good opportunity to show off one's military strength. At the climax of the military strength of all parties, the moment that new airship appeared, it would be able to suppress the restless major nobles and subordinate countries, increasing his authority by another level. The reason why I said that the emperor was a gambler was because while this plan sounded good, it was also a dangerous gamble filled with uncertainty. If the engineers in despair completely destroy their painstakingly created creation, the inside would already be in ruins. Even if the door is opened, if there isn't a single airship that can be completed in time for the enthronement ceremony within 3 months, it would still end up with nothing to show for it. However, his early fulfillment of the contract was a good thing for the Donglan Principality, which was in urgent need of resources. But for me, I had to hurry up. After all, I was also very interested in the treasures of the underwater base. At the very least, the technology of the floating airships could be said to be a priceless treasure that all countries would covet. Logically speaking, there should only be one entrance to the underwater base, which was around the pier of the abandoned bridge. However, that area had long since become the base of the Ottoman royal guards. The emperor's most trusted elite troops were stationed there, and there was also the semigod dragon hunter Deimos there to hold the fort. Not to mention entering, even getting close to it would cause great trouble. But at this moment, I was diving in the river in search of something else. Got it, it's really here. Even though I was constantly complaining, the multipurpose cat was able to emit a faint glow underwater, making it easier for me to find my target. After 2 nights of fruitless searching, I finally found my target. It was the emblem of a white wolf on a rock wall. Although it was covered with aquatic plants and much of it had been corroded by the water, the malevolent image of the wolf's head was still vivid and lifelike. I carefully moved the wolf fang necklace closer to the emblem on the rock wall, but there was no reaction at all. As expected, the blood I got from Desos wasn't enough. Luckily, I was prepared. In the small pouch on my waist, there was a bottle of fresh blood that I had just obtained. Dasos's father, unfilial son, there are blood-sucking rats in the dungeon. Get lost. Smelly rats. Could it be that my illustrious reputation will be lost to the mouths of rat? As the blood mixed with the river water, the wolf fang necklace was completely dyed red. Finally, the eyes of the wolf head sculpture emitted a white light. Then, a black hole on the rock wall opened up, causing the water level of the entire river to slightly change. As expected, there is an underwater exit. Finally, I relaxed. This kind of underwater base that was hollowed out from the rock wall should have an emergency exit. Although it was just my personal guess, the opening of the hole after the mechanism was activated proved that my guess was correct. However, this passage wasn't wide. It shouldn't be a passage for ships as I expected, but an exit for the flow of water or for the migration of people. I carefully dived into the hole and followed the underwater passage upwards. A few minutes later, I reached the surface of the water. The moment I poked my head out, I hurriedly dived back down before I could even take a second look. No matter how much I thought about it, I still didn't expect this kind of result. Regardless of whether it was me or Dasos, we didn't have any hope that there would be any survivors in the base. After all, water and food had been cut off for more than a year. Even if they could make do with the river water, if they didn't have food for a year, no matter how I thought about it, they would have all died. However, with just a glance, I realized that we had guessed wrongly. Not only were there survivors here, the survivors were actually working hard to build ships. At the pier on the side, there were already 2 medium-sized airships docked. They are actually from the same profession. Looking at the number of low-tier undead, there should be an undead lord among them. Yes, although there were survivors, there weren't any living people. Most of the workers at the pier were skeletons and zombies. However, looking at the flesh on the zombies that hadn't completely decomposed yet, they had just become undead not long ago. Is it Prince Calisin? There might be at least a Saint rank Lich among them. That will be difficult to deal with. Even if I ignored the undead, the small-sized and medium-sized magic statues at the pier wouldn't be easy to deal with either. As the most important military base of the Ottoman Empire, it would be unimaginable that it didn't have a defense that was armed to the teeth. Based on the information from the future, the Invincible Fleet in the future also had a ghost fleet. The commander of the ghost fleet was a high-level Lich named Calisin. It was said that he was the younger brother of the previous emperor and the uncle of Dasos. Back then, there were people who guessed that a great prince of a large country would become a Lich. What was even more ridiculous was that the Winter Wolf King actually gave almost half of the fleet to this undead. But now, it seemed that this prince should have given the fleet to the emperor instead. Perhaps this time, being separated from the outside world was an opportunity for this archmage to transform into a Lich. After all, if he discovered that there wasn't enough food, he definitely wouldn't just sit and wait for death. Transforming into an undead that didn't require food might be the best choice for him to survive. I silently moved underwater and memorized the situation around me. Then, I unhesitatingly turned around and left. Since we aren't strong enough this time, let's bring more men with us next time. However, the moment I returned to the church, my plans met with a blow to the head. My current number 1 fighter, the Moon Knight Diana, was destined to be unable to participate in this plan. I grew up in the underground city and water is an important resource. It would be a waste to use it for bathing. If I were to use it for swimming, alright, I didn't need to say anything else. The excuse that the residents of the underground world couldn't swim was too convincing. Considering that a Saint Knight is a heavy armor unit that relies heavily on equipment to survive and diving while wearing armor is an impossible challenge, I immediately dispelled the idea of letting her try diving. Looking around, Beifeng and Kageo were looking up at the sky, trying their best to pretend that they didn't hear our discussion. Grim maintained his silence, but just by looking at his heavy armor, it was obvious that he wouldn't be able to enter the water. On the other hand, Momo enthusiastically raised her hand to speak. I am the best swimmer among the town security. I have practiced in old Meraki's fish pond and I can hold my breath underwater for a minute. I can even swim 30 meters in a single breath. Alright, What does this achievement of a 10-year-old child mean? As expected, it was too early for me to be happy. In the end, I turned my pleading gaze towards Kolos, but she replied with an apologetic tone. Lord Oracle, wild elves have never liked water. Due to being in the underground world for a long time, I didn't even learn how to transform into a seal, so it won't. It rarely rains in the underground world. Looking at the bunch of landlubbers in front of me, just as my head was about to explode, the black cat on my shoulder smiled gleefully. Idiot, it won't be enough to find a siren. Their racial talent, blessing of the sea god, allows those who can't swim to swim and breathe underwater for a short period of time. It will definitely be enough. There is only a river here and no sea. Where can I find a siren? This. It was a tattered poster. On it, there was a comical clown, a two-headed ogre acrobat, a trapeze artist swinging on a swing and a siren beast tamer performing seal training in a huge pond. Fire Dragon Circus? I seem to have heard of it somewhere. Chapter 97. Aurora Night. Isn't that just a legend? In the past, the Mist Kingdom's Royal Knight Corps had a special unit called the Aurora Knight. They were a rarely seen 4th tier, gold, troop type among the humans. However, they should have disappeared along with the fall of their country more than 300 years ago. But as time passed, the legendary knight gradually became a legend that was doubted by others. After all, their numbers were never large and they never left the snowy northern lands. The advantage of humans was their rapid growth. But on the other hand, due to the short lifespan and peak period of the long-lived species, the average combat strength of the human countries had always been at a bottleneck. For example, it took 7 to 10 years to groom a mature white wolf knight. In other words, a rookie would only be able to become a qualified knight at the earliest of 17 to 18 years old. Then, by the age of 40, all aspects of a knight would start to deteriorate rapidly. It was impossible for a knight to serve for more than 20 years. The period between 28 to 35 years old was the peak period of a knight. After deducting the bonuses from their equipment, most of the ace knight would never be able to reach the 3rd tier in their lifetime. This was the reason why it was called the silver dignity. In most of the human kingdoms, a knight who had reached the silver rank would automatically obtain the lowest noble title. And those lucky ones who had successfully stepped into the gold rank would obtain the title of master in their respective races. This had already surpassed the limits of hard work and was destined to be the privilege of a small number of geniuses. The god of fate was fair. The more a warrior relied on their weapons and equipment, the harder it was for them to advance to the next tier. Comparing the humans to the other races, the humans were too far behind. It wasn't difficult for an adult elf to reach the silver rank. It wasn't difficult for an adult superior elf to reach the gold rank through hard work. Although the beast men didn't advance very quickly, with their outstanding basic attributes and racial talents, as long as the difference in their weapons and equipment wasn't too great, they wouldn't have any problems fighting against 2 beast men of the same rank. However, the reason why humans were able to suppress the other races to become the hegemon of the continent wasn't just because of their large population, but also because of their extremely complicated classification of troops. Outstanding equipment manufacturing technology was also indispensable. Special, elite, ace. Every mature troop had their own unique equipment and tactics. Relying on the bonus of equipment, troops with an average of grade 2, bronze, could become the main force of each country. The Ottoman Empire was so strong and prosperous because of the White Wolf Guards with an average of grade 3. The micellar dragon spear that they were equipped with was indestructible after being infused with magic power. The explosive javelin that could be detonated once could withstand a full-powered blow from a low-tier gold-tier warrior. The explosive sword that had flaming chain-like teeth was a terrifying cutting machine in close combat. With the help of these powerful weapons and the indestructible micellar light armor, the powerful Ottoman Empire had invested a lot of money into it. That was how the trump card of the light cavalry, which had an average of 3 tiers, was created. The reason why they were light cavalry was because their equipment was too heavy. The existing high-quality war horses could no longer allow them to wear heavy armor. They could only be equipped with light armor that protected their vitals. Moreover, this light cavalry is famous for being slower than heavy cavalry. This was already the standard of the ace guards of the various super-empires. Furthermore, it was the result of the rapid development of alchemy and alloy smelting technology in the past 100 years. However, according to the legends, there was actually a gold-tier heavy-armored knight known as the Aurora Knight in that bitterly cold country 300 years ago. No matter how one looked at it, there was actually a gold-tier heavy-armored knight. The difference between an average gold tier and an average silver tier is like the difference between heaven and earth. What kind of mount and equipment could raise a bronze tier warrior to the combat power of a gold tier warrior? Could it be that they are all dragon knight? With 100 of such knight, it would be enough to sweep the entire world. However, the other party did send over some information and instructions. They even sent over a set of equipment samples. Furthermore, through preliminary inspection, the complete Aurora Knight has indeed reached the standard of a grade 4. Dasos opened his mouth wide and his face was filled with disbelief. Such a powerful weapon of the country was given away just like that. Back then, during the negotiations, Roland did half-jokingly say that he wanted to exchange the Aurora Knight for the 3 grade 3 troops of the Ottoman Empire, including the White Wolf Guard. However, in reality, the existence of the Aurora Knight had always been doubted. If it really existed, its value would indeed be higher than the 3 grade 3 troops. Everyone treated it as a joke. Thus, back then, Dasos agreed without hesitation. He even said that if he was willing to exchange, he was willing to provide 1,000 sets of equipment samples for each of the 3 troops. This was just a verbal promise meant as a joke. After all, even if the Aurora Knights truly existed, they should have already disappeared in the annals of history. Otherwise, the East Mist communal country wouldn't have suffered defeat after defeat, their national strength constantly declining. But now, the information and equipment samples of the troops were actually sent over. Furthermore, it was during his most difficult period. What kind of situation was this? Was he trying to find a way to express his allegiance? Dasos was overjoyed at once and asked, "Is there anything?" He asked. "Have you done the tests?" Very quickly, when the samples were sent over, Dasos's joy turned into coldness. It was indeed a gorgeous armor that was as beautiful as a work of art. It was heavy yet beautiful. The spikes that were spread out were obviously not for the sake of beauty. The cold air around it made one feel the scent of magic. But the equipment was melting and the surroundings were filled with water. Isn't this an ice sculpture? Why is it an equipment? Based on the information that the other party sent over, the armor of the Aurora Knight is made of special ice. We have tested it, and before the special magic dissipates, the hardness of the ice armor is actually 3 times that of our micellar alloy. However, its mass is only a quarter of our micellar alloy. As for the Aurora Knight's mount, it is a spiritual creature known as the Frigid Nightmare. The information clearly states that they have signed a contract with the Mist bloodline. Every 20 years, they will provide a batch of young Aurora Knight as their mount. This kind of accumulation can be accumulated. Over the past 300 years, they have probably accumulated quite a lot. That is to say, the Donglan Principality has at least one trump card, the Knight Core. In an instant, Dasos came to a realization. This was a show of goodwill as well as a display of strength. The ice armor and spiritual mount of the Aurora Knight were obviously a specialty of the northern lands. They might not even be able to leave their homeland, but if they were to be invaded by a war, no wonder the Allied army formed by more than 10 countries back then suffered heavy losses. Will this ice armor and blueprint be of any help to us? Extremely. Even though there are many flaws, this is probably the pinnacle of what humans can achieve. As long as we can digest these theories, our White Wolf Guard will be able to take another step forward. Who knows, we might even be able to give birth to a new type of troop that is at least tier 3. Nodding his head, Dasos hesitated for a moment before coming to a conclusion. Give her the information on all the troops other than the White Wolf Guard and promise to give her the information on the White Wolf Guard 3 years later. Also, express sufficient goodwill to open up trade and trade. Right, give those 3 dwarfs a better treatment. The reappearance of the Gemini star might allow the Donglan Principality to rise once more. Right, help me ask her if she is willing to have dinner with me. Not long later, while rejecting that embarrassing invitation, I looked at the present that Dasos sent over and smiled in satisfaction. The Aurora Knight does exist, and it is the main force of the Mist Kingdom's Royal Knight Order. However, it is a pity that the altar of the contract with the Frigid Moor tribe is located in the coldest land, the Northern Lands. Currently, it isn't even in the territory of the Mist Kingdom, so it isn't an easy task to bring it back to the world. Actually, this ice armor is a fake product that the Queen of Banshees and I created together. The real extreme chill heavy armor requires the help of the power of Frigid Moor, so it isn't so easy to melt it. In order to prevent the wearer from being frozen into an ice cube, it is necessary to sign a contract with this cold attribute soul creature. The real Aurora Knight is indeed a Tier 4 powerful troop, but in order to fulfill the requirements of the contract, the wearer must be a Tier 3 pinnacle powerful knight. To the other races, the pinnacle of silver rank doesn't mean much. However, to the humans, this is already the pinnacle that mortals may never reach in their entire lives. This is also the reason why the Aurora Knight is unable to become a regular unit. However, if a war were to break out, as long as I have 100 Aurora Knights on hand, I wouldn't even bother with 1,000 White Wolf Guards. Of course, with the speed of producing 100 frigid nightmares every 20 years, the Aurora Knight Order has never been full. However, just thinking about the 300 years of not fulfilling the contract, there are at least 1,500 frigid nightmares waiting for the summons of the knights in the Northern Lands. I can't help but feel tempted to send my troops to take back that lost territory. As for the information that I provided to the Ottoman Empire, I don't think that they would be able to create the Aurora Knight with just these things alone. The weapon information that they exchanged for could improve the alchemy and industry in Donglan, which has fallen behind this era by nearly 200 years. This is the most important thing. Besides, since I have slapped him in the face, it is time to give him some benefits. The contract isn't omnipotent. It isn't a good thing to completely stand on the opposite side of the Ottoman Empire. The most troublesome enemies are always those whose stances are unclear. On the contrary, it would be easier to deal with them if they really stand on the opposing side. At this moment, I don't have the time to bother about such trivial matters. The group of knight lads in front of me are full of energy, but they are obviously living like princes. Not long after the training started, they are already full of complaints. Hold on for me. After we finish the final training, there will be dinner. Without a doubt, the scene in front of me is a tragedy. Under the pursuit of a pack of wild dogs, the young knight whose hands are tied are squeezing out the last of their stamina to escape from the tiger's mouth. On the other side, Diana is supervising Princess Renee's swordsmanship training. Every single strike of her sword is methodical. The frigid nightmare is indeed a unique product of the Northern Lands. However, it is a kind of soul being. When the knight that lives together with it dies in battle, if the frigid nightmare doesn't choose to return to the snowy mountain, it will fall into a long slumber. Most of the time, it will reside within the relics of the knight. If such relics were to meet a suitable knight, it is possible for the sleeping soul being to awaken and turn it into a new Aurora Knight. If the new generation of knight is related to the old knight by blood, the chances of them being recognized will increase greatly. This is also the only way for the Aurora Knight group to expand its membership outside of the usual supply. I still have quite a few relics of such knight in my hands. Initially, I didn't intend to take them out, but after hearing from Kelly that there are quite a few royal knights who are escorting the royal family here, I was tempted. 5 of them are at the pinnacle of silver and the rest are just at the pinnacle of silver and bronze. This won't do at all. Even though I lack fighting prowess at the moment, if I want to become a glorious Aurora Knight, just relying on my bloodline isn't enough. If you want to inherit the strength and glory of your ancestors, you must at least show me your ambition. At the very least, you must prove that your life is tough enough. Thus, these few days, the knight's luck is really bad. After the physical endurance limit test, the expected lunch didn't arrive. Instead, a new test is right in front of us. Yawn. Big sis, stop splashing water. We have caught a cold. There's no cure for a cold in the summer. However, after getting my permission, Momo doesn't hesitate and splashes another bottle of ice water. In an instant, the faces of the 2 youngsters turn pale. Their eyes roll back and they faint. Then, Someone pulls them over and pa them to wake them up before throwing them into the ice pool again. The sight before me is really unbearable. Kelly walks over stealthily and whispers in my ear. Sitting on the tip of a blade, stepping on charcoal fire, chasing after people like a wild dog. Now, they are drenched in sweat yet they immediately soak in ice water. Is this training method really correct? I only see these children hovering between life and death, but I don't see them improving. Back then, Ferdinand didn't train like this. No matter how they train, in the end, they will still be forced to surpass their own limits. After they hover between life and death a few times, they will break through. Don't worry, back then, I received the purest Royal Knight training. She nods her head in disbelief. However, just as she turns around and takes a few steps, she seems to have thought of something and hurriedly runs back. I was almost fooled by you. Back then, you became a holy knight at the age of 10. How could you have received the complete Royal Knight training? At the very most, I only taught you the basics of swordsmanship. Don't worry, I am a legend rank teacher who taught a semigod. My teaching method isn't any worse than the traditional one. You can rest assured. Look, didn't Renee break through to bronze rank under my training? Renee's inexplicable breakthrough is indeed great news and an extremely convincing fact. Kelly doesn't say anything else. What she doesn't know is that I am also filled with doubts at this moment. Why isn't she breaking through yet? Didn't that fellow Adam break through for no reason? Why don't we try meditating under the waterfall, fight until we are half dead to understand the universe and tie weights that are heavier than our body weight to test our perseverance? Let's do it one by one. As long as we don't die, we will break through one day. Oh right, bungee jumping is said to be a kind of stimulation to one's potential. There is also the extreme hunger training. I might as well stop them from having dinner for 10 days. One day, and asks Adam why Adam didn't teach her personally but let her travel alone to train in actual combat after teaching her the basic techniques. At that time, Adam hesitated for a long time before replying, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I really don't know how to teach you. If we were to use the method we used back then, I think that if you aren't a cockroach, you probably won't be able to survive. Oh right. Don't ever look for your Uncle Bones to learn martial arts. Also, when he says that word, don't hesitate, run as far as you can. That word. It's new idea. At this moment, I have a brilliant idea. Yawn. Who's talking about me? That's right, little ones, I have a new idea. Let's try to race the horses. You can tie yourselves to the horses and then give them a blow. Let the horses run with you. What? Afraid that you can't keep up? If you can't keep up, just drag it on the ground a few times and you should be able to catch up quickly. Back then, that fool and I used velociraptors. They are much faster than warhorses. It is hard to find velociraptors here, so let's make do with warhorses. We will definitely die. But it is a pity that the princess has already handed them over to this demon. No matter what, we can only follow to the end. Oh right. I have another good idea. I heard that a tattoo on the chest can stimulate one's potential. Why don't we give it a try? Some years later, whenever the first batch of Aurora Knight recalls the past, their faces would be filled with tears and the moment the word instructor is mentioned, they would tremble reflexively. Some of them would mysteriously carry snacks on them, some would shiver at the sight of dark elves and ice, some would mysteriously catch a cold in the summer and recover in the winter. Among the strongest group of Elder Knights, the most incredible thing was the tattoos on their chests. Some of them had tattoos of a tiger, some of them had tattoos of a long-nosed elephant, and most of them had tattoos of 7 inexplicable scars. You are already dead. I have no regrets in my life. This is their battle cry that makes their enemies feel despair. The confidence and fearlessness of death in it makes this battle cry become a role model for future generations of Night Knights. In this era where there is a lack of entertainment, especially for commoners, a wandering circus comes to a village, sets up tents, beats gongs and drums, and distributes flyers. That is the town's festival, and it is the happiest time for the children. But for a circus, the roads between towns are often not safe. Furthermore, the daily work is hard, and rich merchants and nobles disdain circus performances for being vulgar. The trend of entertainment focusing on commoners doesn't make much money, so it is often difficult to retain talents. Thus, the history of a normal circus is not long, and it is common to see them disband after 3 to 5 years. Even if they occasionally become popular because of a novel and interesting program, due to the solidification of the business model, they will fall into a predicament in the future and eventually disband. The Fire Dragon Circus is an old circus with a history of 100 years, and just like other once popular stars, it also ushered in its own decline. This time, they were invited to perform in a circus at the enthronement ceremony. This is a good opportunity to become a big circus. If they become famous because of this, they might become a permanent troupe of a certain theater, or a team hired by a great noble for a long time. Then, they would be able to get rid of the shackles of a wandering circus and completely go ashore. But just as everyone was happily planning for the future, they inexplicably encountered an unexpected disaster. First, the original leader and star trapeze artist, Sangloa, was inexplicably seriously injured in training. Then, a series of training accidents occurred, causing the circus to be temporarily unable to operate. Seeing that the enthronement ceremony was imminent, the competitors, the Fetero Circus and the Flying Wings Song and Dance Troupe, came to poach them. 2 of the original 3 pillars were poached, and the remaining Siren Beast Tamer caused a lot of trouble for the circus. Seeing that they can't even perform normally, and the family circus that has been passed down for 3 generations was about to disband, the seriously injured Isangloa almost couldn't take it anymore and directly died. And before he completely fainted, he passed on the responsibility of leader to the immature little Milo. But unfortunately, even though little Milo is working hard to maintain the family business, even though the old members are working hard to perform and taking the initiative to reduce their salaries, the day of disbandment is still uncontrollably approaching day by day. But today is a joyous day. There is actually a rich man who proposed to sponsor the Fire Dragon Circus. Little Milo is simply overjoyed. "Hello, honorable lady, may I know your name? Are you married? Oh, that's great. Can I have dinner with you tonight?" Just as he walked into the large pool, he heard a vigorous voice. Milo frowned. Although the Siren Tracy is the pillar of his circus, her natural charm has also caused a lot of trouble for his circus. "Dear customer, the circus is not open now. Please don't pester the members." Ah! Just as he approached, the scene in front of him is very puzzling. The beautiful siren is in a daze at the side, and a half-dragon is chatting with a seal. And at the same time, a blonde holy knight walks over with a smile. "Good day, Lord Milo. I am Roland. There are some things I would like to discuss with you. This concerns a large sum of gold coins. Are you interested?"